afternoon. How are you? Only fine? Yes. Lovely. Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the from a lot of different developers throughout today. So today we are starting off with a bit of a surprise last-minute edition, which is a really cool last-minute edition, simply because it is a digital replica of the airport we are at today, which I think is just the perfect way to start FS Weekend 2024 here on Sunday. Throughout the day, we do have seminars from the likes of ToLiss, so if you're interested in Airbus aircraft, they're going to do a really interesting talk later on this afternoon. We have the FlyByWire team as well, demonstrating their Airbus aircraft alongside the VATSIM network. And we also have a panel discussion from ourselves at the FSElite team, and we're going to be joined by some industry insiders as well to talk about Flight Simulator in 2024. But, as I said, we are starting today with a surprise and last-minute edition, but again, it's going to be very cool from a brand new developer, as you can see up here, Papa Hotel. So, just very quickly, some housekeeping things before we do get today underway. The exits, as you are aware, they are the ones you came in at the stairs, or we also have additional exits down here on the floor as well. But that's it from me for now. It's just now for me to hand you over to Papa Hotel, so please do put your hands together for our incredible new developer who's going to talk about Lelystad Airport.
Good morning. Thank you. Yeah, it was a bit late announcement that I would be presenting today. So thank you to Colin and Niels and Jannes for asking me. Welcome everyone at the Aviodrome. Flow manager, there's no telly on the cameras, so I'll pick you. Everyone on the live stream, welcome to you as well. My name is Ron Fleurbij. I'm the founder of Papa Hotel, Dutch scenery design, and I'm the developer of the new upcoming Lelystad Airport for Microsoft Flight Simulator scenery. I'm a professional wearer of David Clark headsets, but usually in a non-aviation environment. First, before I introduce the scenery, let me briefly tell me a little bit about myself. I was born and raised just 10 minutes north of here. I come from a very aviation-minded family. One of my uncles used to be a private pilot at a flight club right next door, and another one was flying that big blue thingy parked outside the theater. If you haven't seen it, just walk outside, you can't miss it. As a kid, I used to come here quite often, either flying with my uncle or visiting the annual flight shows. Later in life, I became a frequent flyer myself, and usually everything from my equipment fitted nicely into a trolley fitted in the overhead cabin. And later in life, when I made a career switch, I needed permission from the airline to take my equipment on board. Or you can find me at the odd size belt nowadays. I've been flying for Flight Simulator for about 40 years. And both in terms of age and version of Flight Simulator, I guess you could say I'm an early adapter. The first time I started tinkering around with scenery development was in the early days of FSX. Back then I was flying Air Hauler, and for those of you who don't know the program, it lets you run an airline. You can fly jobs yourself or hire AI pilots and buy new airplanes, open up new hubs. And I'd like to create liveries for the airline I was flying and the airplanes I like to fly. Later, the runway got extended in real life from 1350 meters to, it got extended to 1350 meters, which didn't reflect in the sim. So I started to do ground polygons. And when I learned to do all of that, we were flying prepared version 2 or 3, I can't really remember. And the scenery got dated quite a bit at that time. So I thought, how hard can it be doing your own buildings? And that's where the hobby really got out of hand. So fast forward to the early months of 2020, something had happened in China and influenced the rest of the world. I was scrolling around on the FS Developer Forum and came across a post from renowned scenery developer Bill Womack from I Blue Yonder. He stated his prediction that we would be locked at home for quite a while, and he posted a series of videos he created for his apprenticeship program, and well, people might want to learn a new skill. So in one of his videos he said that the apprenticeship program was still open for application, and I saw an opportunity to further grow my hobby, sent him an email, quickly got accepted, and since then I've been working on several projects for his Dallas Love Field scenery, as well as some contract work we did as a studio. And after finishing my last part of the contract work, I wanted to put everything I'd learned into practice and start a new solo project, and that became Lelystad Airport. Now, since the days of the old Aerosoft scenery for Microsoft X, FSX, a lot have changed at the airport, and the Schiphol Group had acquired the airfields back in 1993 with the aim to move a lot of holiday traffic from Schiphol to Lelystad Airport. Back in 2015, these plans were finally approved by Parliament and the Dutch government, and work on the airfield started right away. So the runway got extended from 1,350 meters to 2,700 meters with a landing distance of 2,100 meters. A new taxiway November and an apron and a new passenger terminal were created on the north side of the airfield. Now, there is a huge discussion going on in the Netherlands whether or not Lelystad Airport should be allowed to to be opened up for commercial traffic. I'm not going to disturb that hornet's nest, but the new terminal building on the north side is already built and not in use yet. And I modeled that interior using a feature story from one of my broadcast clients, which I unfortunately didn't film myself. But I do think that the entrance hall is just as empty and feels as desolate as it does in real life. The gates are also modeled, as well as the upstairs lounge, and I'm not really sure if that's visible, but some of the couches even have plastic covers so they don't collect much virtual dust. The scenery features also a detailed rendition of the museum, including the replica building of the 1928 Schiphol terminal, as well as many of the aircraft on static display. Furthermore, throughout the airfield you will find many real-life registrations of aircraft being parked in front of the hangars they're actually based at. The scenery includes 30 centimeters per pixel ortho imagery from last November, high-res and detailed aprons and ground polygons, custom taxiway lights and edge markers, custom runway and approach lighting systems, custom and accurate taxiway signs, many animated 3D objects, including windsocks, flags, air conditioning units and gates, And the Saab Viggen has been moved from the new hangar where the MiG is standing to a place where in the scenery there is a parking spot. And make sure that if you're parked in the parking spot and you want to take off, do it before the museum closes, because the gates will close when the museum is not open. It features custom night lighting, and for those using GSX, it will come with a custom GSX profile as well. Now, this scenery is pretty dear to my heart. It started out pretty much as a passion project for me. So I would like to keep this scenery up to date, and it will feature regular updates in the near future. Updates include 3D animated people, open hangars, not all, but a couple, and most importantly, a feature where you can choose between the real life version of the airfield and what it's supposed to be, with the new passenger terminal being in use. Now, in broadcasting, there is a saying that an edit is never finished until you say it is. That pretty much goes for this scenery as well. And for me, it will probably never be finished. And yeah, I'm trying to get the scenery out pretty soon, so you can all enjoy it as well. And the mentioned features for the future will come, but all in due time. And oh yeah, there is one more thing. The new Papa Hotel, Echo Hotel, Lima Echo, Lelystad Airport scenery for Microsoft Flight Simulator will soon be available at Contrail for $14.95 excluding VAT. So do we have time for a Q&A?
Yes, we do. Hello. Yes, so any questions? Yes, sir. So the question was, will it be a separate download or will it also be available in the marketplace?
Good question. I've been really busy getting the scenery out. So for now, it will start with being available at the Contrail shop, and then from that we will expand to other shops and hopefully the marketplace as well. That's what I'm planning to, yeah.
Excellent question. Any further questions from the audience? No? Fantastic. Well, no? Okay, brilliant. So obviously you're going to be here around the show for the rest of the day, is that right?
Yeah, I will be in the Sim Market Hall with all the other developers. If you want to come and see me, have chats, you'll find me there. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for bringing this to Lelystad Airport. I mean, it's a fantastic airport to see.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So that concludes our little surprise announcement today. So please do stick around if you want to come and watch the FSElite panel. We're going to be talking about flight simulation in 2024. So that includes all of the brand new sims coming, those new products, and we have a really cool panel as well where we're going to be asking questions and also taking audience questions as well if there's any burning questions you want to ask our panel of experts. And that will be taking place in here in about 10 minutes time. Thank you. Hello and welcome to the FSElite Theatre. How are you all doing? Try again. Hey, there we go. So, welcome. We are so glad to have a nice crowd with us today to talk all about the future of flight simulation. My name is, kicking the plug, my name is Callum and I'm from the FSElite team and I'm going to be the host today and I'm going to be taking you through what our panel discussion will be all about today, and that is the future of flight simulation in 2024. I am not alone. I am going to be joined by a team of amazing experts who are all very much versed within the field of flight simulation, and I am excited to welcome them on stage today. So we have Magnus from Threshold, we have Andreas from Cruise Level, we have Jamie, aka London Controller, and we have Jordan from FSElite as well. Thank you all for joining me.
Thank you for pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Minute. So the way this is going to work today, we're just going to have a quick conversation about what we think is the future of flight simulation and ask you some questions. And of course, if you have any questions in the audience today, then please do raise your hand and we'll get to you as well. And we're just going to have a very free-flowing conversation about what's going on in the world of flight simulation. So Magnus, I'm going to start with yourself and we'll kind of go down the row. Magnus, what are you most looking forward to this year in flight simulation?
I think maybe one of the immediate stuff that I really look forward to is X-Plane's latest update, 12.1.0. Looks really, really good. They now have the anti-aliasing dialed in. Shadows looks crisp. And yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind, actually.
And your background mostly at the moment is in X-Plane, so that must be something that you're super excited for.
Yeah, well, we do write about Microsoft Flight Simulator, and so they're kind of equal. Most of the news actually comes from the Microsoft Flight Simulation area, but we do have a root in X-Plane, so we are rooting for them.
Excellent, thank you so much. Andreas?
Yeah, there's actually two things. Mostly the planes that are coming out now. So the 777 that's shown off in the hall over there looks pretty promising. Also the FlyByWire A380, the trailer they showed yesterday is simply mind-blowing. And also the new MSFS version, even Microsoft is still very laid back, not really showing much about it. What we can glimpse from what they showed, it looks like they could actually shake up the sim scene once more, technology-wise. Really excited to see where it's going.
Excellent, fantastic answer. And of course, we're going to be obviously talking about Microsoft Flight Sim 2024 in this discussion as well. Jamie, over to you. What are you most looking forward to this year?
Probably the 777 and A380 as well. I mean, they're the main releases of the sim that we're looking forward to and excited to see what they're going to bring new people to the community. And probably make VATSIM even busier. I suppose that's another part of it, which is quite exciting and also quite daunting and scary at the same time. But yeah, MSFS 2024, with the trailer we saw about the wildfires, the different sort of atmospherical effects, it'd be very interesting to see whether they will match up to real life and stuff like that, and just add a new dimension into Microsoft Flight Sim and stuff like that. So yeah, we'll see.
Excellent. I mean, you mentioned VATSIM. I mean, when that A380 comes out, we're going to be seeing lots of supers in the air, I think.
Yeah.
And hopefully the right OK is put into the system.
We're a little bit worried at Heathrow with how busy it is going to be, but I'm sure it'll be good fun.
I'm sure it will be. Well, thank you very much. And last, but by no means least, Jordan from our team. What are you most looking forward to this year from flight simulation?
Well, not to steal everyone's answers, but everything that you've all said. As a primary X-Plane user, 12.1 just looks impressive in it. I feel like a bit of a slow start for X-Plane 12, but it's nice to see it in its kind of full force heading forward. And just the A380 yesterday, just really impressive. A team of volunteers, like a lot of us, to put together something like that is really, really impressive. So just looking to see how far that goes, and probably giving Jamie a bit of a challenge of getting an A380 out of Biggin Hill. So
I'm sure that's manageable somehow.
No fuel, no packs.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, all great answers, and obviously there's lots of discussion points. I mean, I think the starting area I think we need to talk about is kind of this idea that right now we've got X-Plane 12, We've got Microsoft Flight Simulator, the current version 2020, let's call it for now. Do you think we are seeing an increase in simmers coming into this community thanks to kind of the more public eye that flight simulation is getting? Magnus, we'll start with you to answer that question.
Well, the fact that Microsoft Flight Simulator came to the Xbox made a huge difference, I think. You kind of saw a shift in the community as well, with a lot of more younger people coming in. But in general, I also think like this venue as well has an incredible turnout, which I haven't seen before. So I think the future is also really, really bright.
Excellent. Anyone else want to chime in on kind of their thoughts?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's really obvious on VATSIM. You see a lot of new people. I think we have now regularly over 2,000 people flying there. If Microsoft shows off their numbers for the MSFS 2020, what they get, like what Jörg recently said in his dev stream, the last 3 months were the most active users they ever saw. And I think it's crazy to see how many people are now packed up FlightSim after P3D and Explain. They also always had their loyal audience. I think it's also still there on both sims. But so much new blood that experiences an amazing hobby for the first time. It's great.
Yeah, and just picking up on kind of new people coming into the hobby. Jamie, you're a controller on VATSIM.
Yeah.
How have you found maybe new people coming onto the network? Do you help coach them and guide them? I mean, we see a lot of people saying there's a lot of youth and inexperience. What's your take on that thing?
I think you've only got to look at the VATSIM numbers and know that they've just grown exponentially in the last few years. And it is thanks to Microsoft Flight Sim, the difference between what we had in P3D and X-Plane. I mean, I used to be able to control on VATSIM absolutely massive sectors, but it's just impossible now because of the amount of people that are on there. But yeah, I think it is thanks to the new sims and stuff like that, and hopefully MSFS 2024 is going to bring even more people. And even being at the weekend this weekend, sometimes when you're flight simming yourself, you don't quite realise how many people are into the same hobby and love doing what we do. So yeah, it's great to see.
I mean, one of the frequent things that we see on our site, don't we, Jordan, is people always asking, when's this come out on Xbox? We had a question earlier about Lelystad that was announced earlier. The first question was, hey, can I get it on Marketplace for Xbox? Jordan, do you think a lot of people are trying things out on Xbox first to kind of test the waters, dip their toes in, and maybe want to explore a little bit further for flight simulation?
I mean, flight simulation has never been as accessible as it is now. Flying whatever you want on your Xbox from your sofa and really discovering flight simulation for the cost of a Game Pass. It's impressive, and it's we all benefit from that, right? New users, they might discover different aircraft, different third parties, different sims, and I think the more we kind of work together to just let people know what is out there. Events like this are huge, and there's so many people that we spoke to this weekend that just, have stumbled through the museum and gone, oh, hello, and that are future flight simmers and future pilots. There's so many pilots out there, real world, that started just accessible, trialing something out from now their Xbox. I think it's just really great to see. Just how quickly you can get in the air from your sofa.
Yeah.
I think actually Microsoft Flight Simulator did this very well in the sense that you can start out as very much a beginner, just fly with all the aids you need to get in the air and land safely, and then from that span go over to really complex stuff. So I think Microsoft has helped that transition a lot.
Sorry, go on.
No, that was it.
So, just speaking of that transition then, do you think people are maybe coming in on that Game Pass experience for free or that £1 trial or whatever, and then they're going to eventually maybe explore different sims such as X-Plane 12 and even DCS or some of those other sims? I mean, Andreas, what's your take on maybe people transitioning to different simulators once they've dipped their toes in that water?
Oh, I think it's definitely an option if these sims have something that pulls people to them. For example, as good as MSFS is for civil simulation, if you're interested in military simulation, there's no other options than going to DCS in the end, because you can fly a Viper or a Tomcat. I mean, Heatbuilder, I think, has the Tomcat now for Microsoft Sim. But it's like, okay, I can fly it around, I can fly patterns, maybe fly some formation with my friends. But to really get to know the plane, get the systems, well, it has to have weapons, and you can't use those in the MSFS, so DCS, that's the next step then. Which is also a sim that really looks to be going strong, always developing in the right direction from the trailer they released a few months ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to try and kind of shift gear just a little bit, because we've mentioned about newcomers coming into the industry. And I think what we saw maybe a few years ago, and this is a conversation we've had in the community a lot, is about pricing, and how pricing has seemingly changed with the introduction of the new sim. We've got more people in the industry, we've got more developers, we've now got more users, and we've seen kind of a chop and change in price. Jamie, I'm just going to start with you, because obviously you test a lot of add-ons out and you stream a lot of the add-ons as well. Where's your thoughts in terms of where pricing sits for like all these add-ons that we have to buy for making these flight sims, you know, improved, enhanced visually, or adding airports and aircraft?
Yeah, I think when you look at how much things used to cost, maybe in some of the older sims like P3D, how much it was to get a series of a certain aircraft, and you look at what we've got in Microsoft Flight Sim with the Phoenix and it being, I think it's £60 or something like that, and the fact they've just brought out the IEs, the Block 2 update, all free of charge and stuff like that. So yeah, it's really impressive, which I think makes it accessible for everyone as well, because you can't expect people, we've got so many different age ranges on Flight Sim. We've got people from young teenagers to obviously older people, and you can't expect the younger people to be able to afford these different add-ons. So it's great that a lot of the companies that are developing for Microsoft Flight Sim are developing with that in mind, and it's great to see that they are making it accessible for everybody.
And do you think that that pricing structure is reflected across all of the sims, or just very targeted on Microsoft Sim just because of their audience size at the moment?
I don't really know, to be fair. I'm not too sure on sort of X-Plane pricing. I've not really flown X-Plane in quite a while, to be honest. But yeah, I think that pricing is now sort of across the board for Microsoft Flight Sim. I think a lot of the developers, even certainly some of the earlier products that came out from Microsoft Flight Sim, when we saw the release of even the PMDG 737-700 or the Phoenix A320, a lot of developers were like, wow, this is what they're pricing their aircrafts for. And because the community is so big, they're still earning a great amount of money from the sow of a product, even though it's cheaper. So it's fantastic, really.
I mean, Magnus, you said you dabble in kind of both, and you run a website, obviously, that does 50-50 kind of thing. What are your thoughts on kind of X-Plane pricing compared to Microsoft's pricing for their third-party add-ons?
Yeah, well, the audience is obviously smaller, so I think the pricing is behind, like, or it is higher. The developers need to get their money. I think Microsoft Flight Simulator just has an incredible audience size-wise, so they have a huge advantage there for the pricing.
Okay, cool. So we've mentioned Microsoft Flight Sim 2024. We saw the trailer last year during the Microsoft presentation, and then it was mentioned again during Flight Sim Expo, and Jorg and Sebastian did a really cool presentation for us and gave us a little bit more detail. I mean, Jamie, you alluded earlier to the whole kind of mission thing that's coming. I see a lot of time that simmers are unsure as to the direction of kind of what Microsoft want. I mean, when it was first announced, like Microsoft 2020, people weren't sure if it was going to include the world or if it was going to be a very mission-based thing. Now we know we have the whole world, but now we're kind of dabbling a little bit more into these missions. Do you think this is something that is upsetting people, or do you think it's just adding or catering to different audiences?
Yeah, I think Asobo and Microsoft, when they first released Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, I don't think they quite expected the Flight Sim community to be as, dedicated to Flight Sim. Like, I think Microsoft 2024 is going to be very much developed for people that do just want it to be casual and do just want to have a little bit of a fly about, but then also the side of things for experienced people or that want to fly a high fidelity aircraft, they're going to have that as well. In terms of the mission side, I think it's a great thing, to be honest. I remember seeing stuff about like the, was it the volcanoes or something like that? I can't quite remember what it was about, but it'd be very interesting to see whether maybe if it's happening in the real world, will that be replicated in the sim and stuff like that? So I just think it's a great thing, and I think it'd be in a separate section as well, the missions. So at the end of the day, if people don't want to use them, they don't have to. So yeah.
Yeah, and Jordan, just for you, I know you're a very much dedicated X-Plane player. I've known you for years and years. Does anything, put your hand on heart, does anything in FS 2024 kind of appeal to you from maybe that side of things, or what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because Asobo and Microsoft are very keen on letting us understand that it's going to be an evolution, not a revolution. So it will be what we've got now plus extra, and I think that's really key because they've kind of not reevaluated but kind of repositioned their thinking in the best of both worlds. And as Jamie said, you don't have to use it, right? But for me, I mean, there's loads of added extras that I would look forward to. Some aircraft that we don't have currently at X-Plane or in the works for X-Plane. It's good competition. It's good competition, and that drives the X-Plane team to go, okay, well, what should we do differently? What third party do we need to work with, and stuff like that. So the forest fires for me, going firefight some forest fires. My aim is terrible, so I'd be able to maybe improve that. But I'm probably one of those that would dabble into Microsoft Flight Simulator more for the experiential bits and pieces, and then if I'm going A to B, I'd probably use X-Plane. So
great, thank you, Andreas. I'm sure as running a news website like you do, you obviously have a lot of comments from the community about all the latest releases and stuff. Do you think that third-party developers are catering more towards a casual audience on Xbox, or quote dumbing things down to cater to them, or do you think it's more of a case of just trying to make things more accessible to the community as a whole?
Yeah, I don't think that the developers are really trying to dumb things down. There's just some limits on the Xbox that are natural. It's a very limited machine in the end, because if we look like the memory, it's like half of what we have usually in a PC. But if we look, for example, at PMG, they got their 737 series running there. I think it's basically feature parity with PC, apart from some bugs with the EFB that they still have to fix. Also, from what I've seen, other stuff is like always running there. So I don't think it's like a lesser way to fly. It's just a more affordable way to fly for people, and it's great. I mean, if they start on the Xbox Series S, it's like 300 euros for the machine. That's less than the GPU cost for most of our customers, I guess. So, yeah.
Anyone got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I fly GA for the most part, and I fly a lot in Microsoft Flight Simulator because when you're close to the ground, X-Plane still has some work to do, in my opinion. But even though I'm not going to fly these missions or whatever, for a GA flyer, it will be an advantage because you will get more details, you'll get more to look at. So when you fly a helicopter somewhere, it will actually look better than it was, I think.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think the visuals has always been something X-Plane have always wanted to work on, and I think what we're seeing with 12.1.0 is that kind of, right, we need to, like you were saying, Jordan, we need to step up our game a little bit because the visuals are an important aspect of a flight sim, as well as obviously the physics and everything else behind a flight sim. So just one final question before we turn to the audience and see if they have anything to ask. For the rest of the year, what is one thing you would like to see either from a third-party add-on or from a simulator platform to introduce by the end of the year? Magnus, we'll start with you.
Well, obviously we develop XenViro. I want that to come up to where it should be, and I also do want the level up to be released this year. That would be awesome. As for other developers and stuff, I'm just sitting back and enjoying what has been and what is coming from on the GA scene in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And now I'm going to be flying a lot more X-Plane again, because now the shadows are good again.
Thank you very much. Andreas?
Yeah, one thing that I think is still missing as native support is shared cockpit, because that really transforms the flying experience for tube liners. We have this, like, what's it called, Your Controls app that works 90% of the time really amazing. But I think it would be really a huge step if you get that natively in the sim, or like a properly support from the add-on developers, because we have to fix these last nitbits that always sour the experience a little bit.
Fantastic. I mean, shared cockpit would be amazing. I mean, it's weird. Aircraft are meant to be designed, especially commercial ones, to be flown with multiple people, yet we still don't have a proper system for all of that. So, great answer. Jamie?
Yeah, I can only echo about shared cockpit, but mine was an A350. I mean, nothing else, just an A350. Yeah, no. Any sort of new aircrafts, obviously can't wait for the 777 and the A380, but yeah, I mean, the A350, we've not really seen anything of its kind in any sort of sim. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to the InnyBuilds one, and I think there's another company, I can't think of their name, I think it's DFD. I think they're going to be providing some updates about the A350 soon. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that plane, and sort of any other plane that's due out, especially for us airliner lovers.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And finally, Jordan, what are you most looking forward to?
So I'm looking forward to seeing what X-Plane looks like this time next year, because I feel like they're in their stride now, and I think they've got a really good base platform to really start building on that. Third-party wise, we've been looking at lots and lots of previews of a lovely 777. Yeah, I'd like it to hurry up a little bit. But the team are working really, really hard, and I know that, and there's so much detail in that. It's going to be possibly the next level of third party for X-Plane. So that's really, really exciting. And there's lots of collaboration on the third party nature for those X-Plane developers, so seeing what that looks like for the platform, and some of those new users that come in, whether it's something like GeoFS that you can run on a web app for free, or if it's via Xbox, introducing them and seeing what that looks like. So,
yeah, absolutely. Anything that can help grow this hobby and industry is a benefit in my eyes, because it means that these shows grow. It means that we as the community also are going to get better add-ons, because it means developers can dedicate more time and resources. So anything like that is a win. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to see if there are any questions now from our audience for our panels. Yes?
Where do you see kind of flight sim going? I know it's probably... sorry. Where do you see flight sim going after 2024? I know that's a big, big jump, but, obviously we've got VR coming in, we've got, photographic scenery and stuff like that, and obviously home cockpits and stuff like that. But where do you think flight sim can actually go? Going from, because being a long user of FSX and FS 2004 and P3D, bit of X-Plane, now 2020, where do you think it's going to go thereafter? Because, the graphics are amazing in 2020, 24 looks pretty good. Just, I don't know, where do you think it could go? And also including X-Plane with that as well.
Magnus?
Yeah, I think one area where we will see more is in the photogrammetry. I really hope that will be developed better, because today you can fly into a city and you see triangles, and you can't land a helicopter anywhere. You'll crash in scenery because it's too janky. I think that will be, especially in dedicated areas, it will be much better in the future. So for the far future, I think we'll have a much more one-to-one visual, even close up. Yeah, I think that's one point.
Yeah. Jamie, did you have
Yeah, I was just going to say, because I think when Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 first released, they pledged 10 years support to 2020, which I think now we're having a 2024 is a really positive sign for our community, because they've obviously got a lot of faith in Flight Sim. They know it's a massive industry. They know they're making money from Flight Sim, which is great. I think it can only get better. I don't know specifically what, but yeah, photogrammetry everywhere would be amazing. Even areas where data is hard to get. There's places like in Africa, in sort of Central Africa, where the Bing data isn't exactly perfect, and you still get some default tiles. So it'd be interesting to see whether they could maybe work on those areas of the world, and whether we could get good data for every corner of the world.
Did you have something to add, Andres?
Yeah, I think we have the basis now. That's pretty amazing. But we now should start to see what the real world looks like. I mean, in the sim, VATSIM is amazing, but if you're not on VATSIM, it's a pretty lonely experience. Let's be honest, the default ATC is not really usable for IFR. And also, it's still the traffic they have there. I think there's a huge AI push now coming, like, for example, beyond ATC, the tool looks amazing to give us that. Maybe that will be also coming into the core sim at some point. And yeah, I think graphics-wise, we only will get more diminishing returns. But also one thing, I think aviation in it itself will be changing in the next, like, say, 10 to 20 years, just due to the realities we are living in. And that will also affect us as flight simmers.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic question, thank you. We have time for just one more very quick one. Yes, gentleman there. Just chuck it. Whoosh.
Yeah, I'm not chucking the mic.
Expensive.
Thank you. Hi, thank you very much for an overview. It's true that with Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, 2024, we got a huge push in realism, huge push in modals and graphics, and X-Plane also presenting more graphic yesterday. But something that's, I think, getting overlooked a lot is the performance aspect and the optimization, because while it's true that the entry barrier is much, much lower than it used to be due to the pricing, the accessibility, the ease of use, and so on, but I think performance-wise, it's not really getting better, because, yeah, of course, if you got a 4080, it's no problem, but if you got something from, 5, 7, maybe 10 years ago, which is, by the way, works perfect for most purposes, yeah, in more modern flight sims, you're going to get a potato graphics at 20 FPS. Do you also reckon that's something that's only going to get worse, especially with the push for release cycles rather than optimization? Is it going to become more of a problem? Because, yeah, 4080 as an entry tool is it's quite something.
Jordan, I'll check that one to you, because you do run a potato.
Yeah, I do run a potato. 20 is a luxury, 20 FPS. I think that actually the growth that we'll see, so your question, going, you know, a mix of two questions, the growth that we'll see is in that either hardware or third party, because I think that will really kind of change the way we interact with flight sim. It has got better. We're seeing a bit like frames per second, up and down, right? They'll release a performance upgrade, and it'll get better, and then it'll get worse. I have refrained from upgrading my PC, but I'm at that time now where I kind of need to. It's a difficult one. Because you're limited in what you use and what you interact with. You get kicked off that sim if your frames per second isn't, up to scratch, which is totally acceptable. So you are limited. Maybe my stance on hardware might change when I get a luxury PC. But I still fly the things that I want to, even in Microsoft Flight Simulator, even with third party. So it's not a limiting factor, I think. It's just difficult.
I'm just going to add to that as well. I think with any kind of technological change, we see the more improvements we get from graphics cards or CPUs, the more power we have to play with, thus meaning developers want to take advantage of those technologies and push the limits even further. And as a result of that, I think that's why sometimes we necessarily don't see the performance gains that we expect to see, because developers have added, the fingerprint smudges and the scratches and the grime and the dirt. But at the same time, we are seeing developers employ more incredible technology, like you've got the decals on a lot of the aircraft now, where you can literally zoom in and you can read the teeniest little bit of text without actually degrading on the performance too much. I think AI is going to be, as again, not just used in the sim to generate text or voices, but I think AI is going to be used more and more in order to help supplement the technology. I mean, we've got DLSS and stuff from NVIDIA, and we've got stuff from AMD, which kind of helps with the whole frame sampling. So I imagine there's going to be a lot more AI tools. I mean, the tool that was released just the other week from Microsoft, that freeware thing, that kind of changes your level of detail on the fly. I mean, that helped my performance considerably. So I think there's a lot of different aspects.
I think what's interesting is back when Microsoft Flight Sim first launched, the third-party API was non-existent, and how that interacts with the sim itself, third party, lots of it was done outside the sim and then put into the sim. But now it's a lot more seamless because the API is getting better and they're working with that. So I think that really helps too.
Fantastic. Fantastic question. I am ever so sorry, but we are all out of time. We hope you have had a fantastic time with us today. I'd like to thank my special guests, so Magnus, Andreas, Jamie, and Jordan. Oh, hang on a second. I'm being waved at. Have I got questions from online?
Specifically for you, Jamie, but maybe everyone can answer
Here we
it.
go.
What is the bringing a lot of viewers? What is the aircraft that you're looking forward to most flying next year, or maybe even the year after?
Yeah, I think it's definitely the ones that have been on preview recently. Obviously, the A350, the A380, and the 777. They're sort of your long-haul aircrafts that I'm really looking forward to flying. But then I'm hoping we are going to get some developments on the A220. It's quite a regularly used aircraft and stuff like that. So I would really like to see that come to fruition. And because the flights that I do are usually 60 minutes, 90 minutes each way, rather than 8-9 hour long hauls all the time. So yeah, I think probably the A220 is up there for my short haul aircraft that I'm the most looking forward to. And then yeah, it's probably the A350 for the long haul, and of course the A380 and the 777. I'll just take anything at this point.
Anything with wings?
All the aircraft.
Oh yeah,
All
everything. Yeah, just something, please.
Fab.
Maybe I'm missing one plane, a 747 for the MSFS. I mean, we got the 8, but it's still his working title. It's okay, but the Queen of the Skies, it's needs
missing.
to be there.
Yeah. Okay. Any more questions before I wrap it up? No? No. Okay. Cool. Thank you again very much. Thank you to our panelists. If you do see us around, please do feel free to ask us. You can find us at FSElite, at Threshold, at Cruise Level, and you can also find Jamie on Twitch as London Controller. Thank you once again, and enjoy the rest of today. Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back to the FSElite Theatre. If you don't know already, my name is Callum and I am from the FSElite team, and it is a real pleasure to have you all here today. We have had an amazing panel so far. If you haven't already had a chance to watch some of them previously, then head out to our website where you can rewatch the live stream. Not right now because you're about to watch one live. But I am very excited to hand you over to Mike from FlightSimCoach, and he's going to do an amazing job telling you exactly what he does, and that is going to help you become a better virtual pilot. So, over to Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, Callum. Hello, as you said, I'm Mike with FlightSimCoach. Just about me in a nutshell, this pretty much explains it. That was the start of my flight sim career on the left. Microsoft Flight Sim 2000, and Pro Pilot was where I started. I think probably the first or second day I had my simulator, my mom told me the words I'll never forget: "Don't you ever think about becoming a pilot." You can see how that turned out. I think I slowly convinced her that I wasn't going to die the very first time I got in a Cessna. And eventually she was actually brave enough to come with me on a jet that I flew. So it all worked out, but basically that's my flight sim story in a nutshell. A bit more about my background. So I've done a bunch of flight instructing in Cessnas primarily as a real-world flight instructor. Also have a few years as a first officer on the Embraer 175. But throughout my life, one constant's been flight simulation, and always has been a passion of mine. And what I've tried to do today is to combine that passion with my love for teaching into FlightSimCoach. So what we do is we do remote instruction for people around the world that want to learn from real pilots. So today what I'd like to help inspire you guys with are ways to become a better sim pilot and how to fly your sim more realistically. So just as first question for you guys, when you guys fire up your sim, what's your preference, flying the airliners or general aviation aircraft? If you guys prefer airliners, raise your hand as your primary preference. Okay, so at least half of you, and then general aviation. Okay, a little less than half, I think. So great. And how about online air traffic control? Do you guys typically fly using some sort of online ATC? Okay, so probably about half then. Now, my first tip for you guys, if you don't already get involved in online ATC, this is, I think, the #1 thing you can do to make your sim experience more realistic. If you look here on the left, this is a picture, just a random night that I found on VATSIM, which is one of the online air traffic control networks, of the amount of airplanes you'll see in the sky. On the right hand is just a screenshot from FlightAware in real life. And you can see in real life, the skies are never empty. And the reality is, as an airline pilot, the majority of what you do when you're just sitting there during a long flight has to do with air traffic control. You're changing frequencies, you're talking to controllers, you're managing the route that ATC changes, that ATC may give you, various changes. So really, for a long flight, that's what it comes down to, is dealing with air traffic control. So to be able to bring that element into your sim is going to make it much more immersive and realistic. So even if you guys are already involved in ATC, one tip that I can give you guys to become a better pilot is actually a bit non-intuitive, which is to consider becoming involved in the air traffic control side of things. That's something that I got involved in when I was quite young, and what it does is it helps you understand behind the scenes what an air traffic controller is thinking about and going through. And this actually helps you become a better pilot, because you'll sort of know what to expect. You'll know more about what controllers find to be important when pilots are talking on the radio, and it gives you a whole new perspective. So I definitely would recommend that if you haven't considered it, to also try the ATC side as a controller, and that will improve your pilot skills as well. So a couple other things about online ATC, there's also the community piece of this as well. I mean, you guys are coming here to FSWeekend, and you can see how awesome it is to be able to meet other people in the sim community, and that's exactly what flying on these online ATC networks lets you do. So it'll be a more kind of exciting and social, interactive experience. If you're not familiar with online ATC, these are the 3 options that are the biggest players. So you've got VATSIM, Iveo, and Pilot Edge. The nice thing is that although Pilot Edge is a paid service, they actually have a free trial. So all of these you can try completely for free. Pilot Edge, though, like I said, it is a paid service that guarantees you ATC coverage during certain hours of the day. Okay, so The next topic I'd like to talk a little bit about is autopilot. So my guess is for those of you especially that like to fly the airliners, you probably are more comfortable with the picture on the right than on the left in general, is my guess. But what I'd like you to think about is just, there's kind of a spectrum of different levels of automation that you have when you're flying an airplane. So if you look at the very top, that's kind of the highest level of automation, where you're flying, let's say, a fully coupled Cat 3 approach down to minimums. You're on autopilot all the way down on auto throttle. So that's kind of the most automated. And then on the other hand, you have, let's say you're hand flying a visual approach with no autopilot, no auto throttle, and maybe you don't even have an ILS tuned in. So you're completely doing it visually as if you were flying a traffic pattern in a Cessna. And there's many different levels in between these two. What I would challenge you to do is to try practicing your approaches or even your departures at these different levels of automation, and it will increase your skills and flexibility as a pilot. But one thing I will have you keep in mind, and actually the panel discussion touched on this a bit, is that when we're talking about hand flying a large jet, an airliner, this is something that's a lot more difficult in the sim than in real life, because a real life airline pilot, they're not doing everything all themselves. If they're hand flying the airplane as pilot flying, the pilot monitoring is going to be handling everything else. So making changes on the autopilot, doing all the radio calls, tuning the radios, and making FMS entries. So when you're flying your sim, you have to do all of this yourself. So give yourselves credit if you're able to manage this well. But I do encourage you to try to practice this as much as you can. Because autopilot, it's great when everything is going well, but when you have these last minute changes that ATC might request, and things are getting difficult, that's where sometimes the best thing to do is just take the autopilot off and put the airplane where you need it to be, without having to do a bunch of clicking around on buttons in your FMS trying to reprogram a route. So having those skills and confidence to take the autopilot off when those situations come up is very important. And you can always put it back on after. It's not a one or done deal. So if you take the autopilot off, it's okay. You can put it back on later. So another concept that I think a lot of simmers don't think too much about is aerodynamics. So this is an area that you can try to learn more about to improve your skills as a sim pilot. So maybe you were flying along in your 737 and you encountered a situation where all of a sudden you get a stall warning out of nowhere, you get the stick shaker, or you realize that, hey, all of a sudden I'm much slower than I expected, and why did that happen? So a key concept for real pilots to really understand well is called angle of attack. And this is something that you might sometimes encounter. Let's say you're flying the PMDG and you look at your PFD in the upper right. You can see, I apologize, this pointer, there we go. You can see the angle of attack readout is right here. So if you wonder what this is, this tells you how close you are to stall. So there would be a red line here that tells you the angle of attack where you're going to stall. In most airplanes, it tends to be somewhere around 15 degrees. So it's important to understand, well, where is this angle of attack coming from? And the way that I like to think about it that may help you understand it very intuitively is it's the difference between where the airplane is pointed and where the airplane is going. And what I mean by that, so let's say you look at a heads-up display. This is what we see on the left here. This is the pitch attitude of the airplane, where the airplane is pointed. And this little circle here is where the airplane is going. This is your flight path vector, or in other words, your vertical speed. And the difference between those two is your angle of attack. So that's what we see here. The difference between where this circle is and where the pitch attitude is, this is your angle of attack. So when you understand it this way, you avoid a trap that many pilots fall into that causes a safety issue in real life, or if you're in your sim, maybe a surprise where maybe you're making this turn and your pitch attitude is actually pretty close to level flight, but you're actually really close to stall, perhaps because the airplane is descending and maybe you have some load on the wing. You're in a turn, let's say. So very important for real pilots to understand, and I would encourage you to think more about this as well when you're flying. And if you're at least flying the 737, you should have this readout here in the upper right. Usually around 15 degrees or so is kind of the maximum you would ever want to see this, much lower than that ideally. Another area that I feel simmers often overlook is fuel planning. So in real life, airlines, they don't want to carry any more fuel than they need to because it costs money to tanker around gas that you're not actually going to need for your flight. This here is an example of a flight that I did in the Embraer from Chicago to Washington. And you can see that you know, when you have situations that come up where you have some weather, let's say, or some sort of unexpected delay, if you haven't thought about having enough fuel reserves, this could be very bad if you plan to go in a straight line, but you actually had to go, in this case, all the way up into Canadian airspace. So these are the situations that happen in real life that in your sim, maybe it's a matter of you're flying on VATSIM and there's some unexpected delays, some holding patterns. Have you planned all that out? Now, I think what happens for many simmers is they don't really think very much about fuel, and they just, you know, maybe accept whatever the default is, or they, you know, just load up full fuel every time, which is fine, but not very realistic, because we're always at the airlines thinking about, you know, what is the actual minimum fuel that we really need to avoid having to carry around anything extra. So one tool that you guys can use would be SimBrief. So this is a way that you can do your flight planning that will give you a very detailed, this is called a flight release, and it will, you know, kind of have line by line all the different factors that determine how much fuel do you need before you actually push back from the gate. So that's going to be your block fuel. And actually try to load that into your sim, and you'll see that once you have this constraint that this is all I've got, that's not going to last forever. You have to think about many more things during your flight that otherwise you might not. And you need to think, well, can I really, you know, hold for, you know, this many minutes if ATC is giving me delay vectors or making me hold for so long? Can I actually do that? So it just creates another layer of challenge compared to if you always just load up full fuel. Same thing goes if you fly a smaller airplane. Now, at a lot of flight schools, you'll just, you know, get the airplane with full tanks, so that's common. But you can challenge yourself by figuring out, well, what is actually the minimum fuel that I would need, and then load that, and then see how that changes your mindset about thinking about, is there an unexpected headwind? All these different factors that'll affect your fuel burn. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to cover is other resources you can use for, you know, kind of improving your knowledge and pilot skills. I suspect most of you guys use YouTube extensively, looking at tutorials and this sort of thing, which is awesome. If you prefer to, you know, kind of read some of the same sort of material that real pilots use, there's a lot of stuff available as well as the source material that will help you dive deeper into various things. Like, for example, the FAA in the US, they have all these free, basically, books online that you can learn about topics like weight and balance, for example, is one topic that a lot of simmers really don't think about at all, but could be interesting to learn just some basics about. Or even airport markings. Do you understand what all of the taxiway markings and signage means as you're flying along online to be able to correctly stop at the right point? So all these things you can, you know, kind of read about as if you were going through real flight training with some of these resources. If you're more into, you know, learning about, hey, what are the jet pilots learning as they go into an airline training environment, then this book here, it's not the cheapest book, but it's actually very well written and engaging. Everything explained for the professional pilot. Consider something like that. And then if you're really trying to dive into a specific type of airplane, let's say you're really into the A320 or 737, whatever the case may be, you can find very detailed information. Of course, some of the add-on manufacturers will publish this, but if you just Google for, you know, A320 FCOM, that's the term that you want to use for an airliner. It's Flight Crew Operations Manual. If it's for a smaller aircraft, then typically looking for, let's say, Cessna 172 POH, that would be a way to get these books that are in the actual airplane, the, you know, perfectly detailed flight manuals. So I encourage you to look for this if you're looking to bring your procedures and realism to the next level. So next, you know, for me, I learn best by doing, and I expect many of you guys are the same way. So what I'd like to talk about is just the basic process for how you can actually improve your skills in your sim in some specific areas. So one key thing that I would encourage you to do is to use replay mode, because we have to figure out, okay, what are the problems first before we can actually fix anything. So in both X-Plane and Microsoft Flight Simulator, there are replay modes built in. In Microsoft Flight Sim, you actually have to go enable an experimental option as of the last I checked. But once you do that, let's say you do a flight, you do your landing, then you can go back and replay it and watch it with, you know, a fresh, relaxed set of eyes and be like, hey, here's an area that I found that needs some work. Maybe I keep floating very far down the runway before I touch down. I need some work on, you know, hitting my exact touchdown point. That's a great challenge you guys can make for yourself, to always try to land, you know, on the touchdown zone markers, let's say. So, okay, we've identified a problem, and then the next step would be to, you know, try to figure out a very specific way to fix it. So maybe if your issue is that floating during touchdown, we can set up a scenario that we can save and then go back to again and again and again without having to wait for our whole next flight. And you can do this again in both simulators, X-Plane and Microsoft Flight Sim. This is what it looks like in X-Plane to save a scenario. Basically, we would maybe fly one approach, wait until we're at 50 feet, let's say. We would save that scenario, call it, you know, 50 foot, you know, 737, save it, and then we can go back and try it again and again and again without having to do the entire flight. So for real pilots, this is one of the biggest benefits that flight simulation offers, is the ability to do this targeted practice. And you can use that to your benefit as well as a sim pilot to really hone in on a particular area that you feel needs work. Okay, so the next piece I think that's important is getting feedback, because there are certain things that no matter how many times you watch your replay, you might never realize that, hey, this is something that I'm sort of missing or not doing quite right. So we all have these blind spots as pilots, and having someone else there to, you know, say, hey, here's something that I think you could improve on is super helpful. So if you're in an online community and you use shared cockpit software or Discord, that's a perfect way to go about getting this sort of feedback. Two of the options that are available, so this is for Microsoft Flight Sim, it's called Your Controls, and it was touched on in the panel discussion that, you know, this may be integrated, or hopefully will be integrated into the sim, Microsoft Flight Sim by default in the future. But this is an add-on that lets you basically hook up to separate simulators, different, you know, wherever you guys are in your world with your flying buddy, and then you can actually share the cockpit together, you know, whether it's for, you know, critiquing each other's flying, or actually to practice that multi-crew member aspect that I touched on as well, being able to have one pilot focusing on flying the airplane and the other pilot doing all the other stuff, the pilot monitoring stuff, you know, doing the radio work, managing the autopilot. So this is for X-Plane, and then there, excuse me, yeah, for here is X-Plane. It's called Smart Copilot, same idea. The trick with these is with some add-on aircraft, there can be issues with getting everything to link up perfectly. But it's something to definitely try out if you have any flying buddies that you'd like to fly with. Where we come in at FlightSimCoach is if you don't have anyone that you already fly with in your community and you'd like to get a real-world perspective, what we offer is the ability to take a live lesson with a real pilot. So that's what we do at FlightSimCoach. So we have a group of about 13 instructors that are around the world. They have experience in actual aircraft ranging from the 737, 787, A320, and of course all sorts of general aviation aircraft. And you just share your screen with them, and you take a lesson as if it were real life. So I kind of like to think of it, at least for the sim enthusiast community, as it's like your human version of a the study level add-on, where you have someone with that detailed system level knowledge and procedural knowledge that can tell you, hey, here's actually how we do it at the airlines, and we can help to improve the realism of your flights that way. And some reasons why folks like to do this, so it's more engaging, of course, than watching YouTube tutorials, to be able to fly with an actual pilot and have that kind of human connection, and also more efficient, because sometimes it just takes an expert to look at your flying for 20 minutes, and we can identify many things that will help you down the line very quickly, just with that eye of experience. And some ways that you can use this remote instruction service, one might be kind of just a basic skills checkup. If you're a simmer that you would like to get this perspective on your flying, you can hire one of the instructors to come along for a short flight and be able to give you basically almost like a little check ride report on, hey, here are the areas where I think you can improve that you can study up on your own. So that's one way. Of course, if you're thinking about taking real-world flight lessons in the future, or you're maybe already a student pilot, then you can use our instructors to be able to prepare for those lessons. That way you get to the airplane, you've already practiced the important things, and that saves you money once you're actually doing your flight training. Yeah, we also have some people that come to us, and maybe they're the type of people that know they'll never fly an airplane in real life, but they want the experience of learning to fly from step one all the way up through getting their virtual PPL or instrument rating. So that's kind of another way we've seen people work with our instructors. And then, of course, some people just want to get variety from their flight sim experience, and maybe you've never flown a helicopter. We've got a 10,000-hour helicopter pilot that's available to give instruction in helicopters, glider pilots, you name it. So that's another way that people like to use it. And of course, they're all sim experts, so they can help you with setting up your sim using the different features that are available. So as a takeaway, a few things that I would challenge you guys to do coming up here. So try online ATC. Again, this was a turning point in my flight sim experience.
Thank you very much. Before you run away, please join me. Does anyone have any questions for Mike at all? Yes.
Just thinking, where are you based? What about the time zones?
Sure. So the instructors are primarily in the US right now. We do have a number that are in Europe, but really the time zone issue, it works out because we have some instructors that in the US, they are available during normal business daytime hours. We have one instructor that's in Colorado that is available very late. So, he's kind of available for, let's say, I think people in Australia it works out well for. So, but between the variety of each instructor's personal availability and the locations of instructors, with some in Europe, some in East Coast time, Pacific, it does end up working out.
Fantastic. I'm afraid that is all the time we do have, but if you have a question, please come find Mike. He is in the Sim Market Hall, and I'm sure he'll be happy to take your answers as well. So
Thanks.
Please put your hands together again for Mike from FlightSimCoach.
Thank you.
So that is FlightSimCoach. Please do stick around though, because our next seminar is all going to be about how you can get into real world flying. So you've gone from the virtual skies now to the real skies, and we'll be right back with you in just a few moments. Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back to the FSElite Theatre. I am Callum from the FSElite team, and we have had a really, really great day so far of seminars and talks. We had a great day yesterday as well, all of which you can recap online later on this evening. But for now, though, you're all here to obviously see OSM Aviation, and we have two fantastic guests who are going to talk you through everything that they have on offer. So please put your hands together for our guests from OSM Aviation.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. It's been really, really pleasant being here, and we're really happy for that. We're here to introduce ourselves as OSM Aviation Academy. Well, our intention is to shape the future of aviation, but we were unable to shape the, this presentation properly, so it's cut in half, so I apologize for that. But what we want to say is that we would recommend you guys to look out for possibilities and for flight schools if you're interested, for sure. We are located in Arendal, Norway, and Västerås in Sweden. We also have the possibility to provide the FAA course in the US. You, of course, get the EASA license here in Norway. Our fleet is the DA42 and the Cessna 172 with G1000 cockpit and fader control, and for the EEC for the DA42, basically the same thing. So that's quite nice, like that. Trying to change. There we go. And for our students, we, of course, we try to provide the most modern equipment. So they will be with the ForeFlight and the Jeppesen plates on the iPad, and also the Bose headsets are available to all of our students at the airports, and also, of course, as mentioned, the G1000. So the requirements that we have is the age of 18, that you have completed high school, and that you have a passed admission test. And in addition to that, of course, we do appreciate the life experience. So at the age of 23, if you have, you know, been working, doing something in your life, you can always contact us and explain us what you've been doing. And, you know, we, as we said, we really appreciate that. So we would, that's also sort of, if you don't have a high school degree, this can help you out. In addition, of course, you need the medical examination, class 1, which you can do at a local AME. So I highly recommend that before you start a flight school, because it can be quite expensive and unfortunate if you don't get the class 1. So that's the medical requirements. Of course, good health in general. A lot of people ask about sight. For the sight, we have good color vision. You don't have to be perfect. There are grades, and you have to measure them at a AME to be 100% sure, because a lot of people think that if you're slightly colorblind or degraded color vision, that it's an absolute no-go, but that is just incorrect. And for the sight, it's +5 and -6. Of course, normal hearing and general health. So that's briefly about that. And I have my colleague here and also a student, Sven, who's going to present the program for you.
Yes, thank you, Moa. Yeah, so now you are into the flight school, and now it's about what are you going to do. Well, to show you here, I'll just click through all those things. We have the two different moments we start with the education, and in Norway it's important that we fly during the summer because the weather is good then. So first you do, for instance, some theory, then some flying, and then back to some theory, or you go from all the theory first, then you do your VFR training, then your IFR training, and then your APS MCC, Airline Pilot Standard Multi-Crew Cooperation, where you learn to work together in a real cockpit of a Boeing 737. But the theory first, that is of course very important. We need to have a lot of knowledge as pilots. So you do all those subjects, which seems a lot and is a lot. You do it in around 8 months in total, and it's like a full-time job to pass all those subjects. But it's very nice and interesting. So it's something you have to go through, but you will gain a lot of knowledge from that. So that's very nice. Then you have your flight training. Well, if we start all the way over there, we have up to the first solo part, where you just be with an instructor, learn the basics of flying. And then after even 12 hours, you can already have your first solo flight, where the instructor jumps out and you're all alone. You have to do it on your own and make your decisions. Then you get into a solo phase, where you also do more solo flying, more landings. You do some night flying as well. And then also some navigation through Norway, which is amazing, I can tell you. So cross-country solo is called for that. And then after that you have UPRT, where you go with an aerobatic aircraft and learn how to recover from unusual attitudes and recognize them, which is very important also at an airline, that you don't spin an aircraft, of course. Then we get into IFR. Then you can finally fly into the clouds with the procedures that the real airlines use as well. You learn a lot of flying in the Boeing 737 simulator for that before you actually go back to the Cessna, where you learn how to fly with IFR. Then it's multi-engine with a complex aircraft, the DA-42 as we mentioned. Then you learn how to fly with engine failures, which can always happen, of course. It's a very short part of the education, but very important, because you will probably fly multi-engine after that. And then you get into the final part, the MCC, like I mentioned already, multi-crew cooperation. Your entire education, you fly the aircraft alone. There's an instructor next to you that can help you, but you have to toggle all the switches, do the comms on the radio, fly the aircraft. And now all of a sudden you have to work together with someone else, where one is pilot monitoring, the other is pilot flying. So that's very important to know how to work together with that. So that's what you learn during the MCC. Now, very important is the price, of course, because it's not free, unfortunately. The total price in euros is 105,000 euros, which is a lot of money, but an investment in yourself. I never feel sad that I did, because it's very good, and now the market is good, so you will probably earn it back in the end. What's important to mention is that that includes, I will read it from it, the flight training, theoretical education, literature, equipment like iPads, uniforms, a loss of license, which is very important. If due to medical reasons you lose your license or you cannot continue the training, you will get back the money. If you don't have that, and there's even one thing that gets you to lose your medical, you will not get any money back. So it's very important to have that, and with OSM is included in the price. And then also important, housing is included during the training program. So you will get a house appointed by OSM, which are quite good. So 105,000 euros, converted into kroners is a bit different, of course, but for here I think euros is fine to state it like that. Then the market outlook. As you can see, this is a Boeing model, the number of pilots that are needed in the upcoming years. Sorry. So it's quite a lot. And if I can tell, for instance, Scandinavian Airlines, SAS, their average pilot age is around 60. So we know that a lot of pilots will soon stop. So a lot of new jobs, opportunities for us. We have a lot of career support. So if you are finished with your training, you are still part of OSM, and we will help you to get your job by helping you in the simulator with instructors that also do assessments, or just helping you for the interview. And we have 2 partner airlines, which is very important, and I think a unique selling point of a flight school, that you have a partner airline to work with, because you have a lot of advantages for that. After you're finished with your education, you can apply for them, and you have like a better opportunity to get into those airlines. We have Norwegian, I think everyone knows them, and we have Norse Atlantic, which is quite a new airline, but they operate out of Oslo, London, Paris, and fly to the US, for instance. So you can be a second officer for Norse, or even a first officer for Norwegian. And like we said, we shape the future of aviation, and you are the future of aviation. We need new people, we need new students to make sure that we can keep flying all the aircraft. So we shape you for the future. And that's it for now. So I don't know if there are any questions.
Fantastic. Amazing. Thank you so much for all of the insight that you have provided us today and those who are watching at home about exactly what you offer. Was there any questions at all? Yes. So the question was, is it just in the summer and what are the dates?
Well, during summer the weather is of course the best, but we fly all year long. But we try to focus that we do most of the flying during summer, like the better months, spring, summer, autumn. And during winter it's just not that many good days of flying, but if there's a good day we actually fly.
So we actually have 3 starting dates. We have it in January and also newly, recently in Norway specifically. We're starting actually this May, a new class, and also in August. So what we do is that the first class in January, they have 4 subjects out of the 13, and then they stop ATPL theory there and continue on flying to use the summer. And then after that, they continue with the ATPL theory. And the August class continues all the way with theory, because that's throughout the winter time. And then they finish all of the theory before they start flying. So they can focus on flying as well during the summertime. Yeah.
Fantastic. Was there any final questions? No? Amazing. These guys are located in the other hangar, aren't you, of all the cool aircraft and stuff right at the back. So please, if you do want to ask them any questions or find out any further information, then please do go find them both. But for now, please put your hands together for OSM Aviation. Thank you
so much.
So please do stick around. We are about to populate the theatre now in preparation for ToLiss, who's going to talk to you about Airbus aircraft in the world of X-Plane. It's going to be a very cool seminar. He's got some amazing product lines as well, including like the Neo, the A321, and so more to watch. So please do stick around and we'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the FSElite Theatre in preparation for your talk with ToLiss. So just a few housekeeping things before we do begin. There are 4 exits in this building. There are 2 at the top, and then there are also 2 down here. Once this presentation has finished, if you do wish to leave, then please do walk just down the stairs and exit towards here. Please don't go back up towards, so we can have a nice one-way flow. And we will also take some questions at the end, so please do hold anything for Torsten at the end. But for now, please do put your hands together for ToLiss, who's going to talk to you about Airbus aircraft.
Okay, hi guys, my name is Torsten, or Gliding Kiwi in the York Forum, and I want to thank FSElite for giving us the opportunity to talk a bit about our company today. And what I've prepared for you guys is a bit the history and like the highlights of what makes our product special. So when it comes to history, how did it all start? And I think in our case you can sum up the motivation with a single picture, which is this. I was living in New Zealand when Air New Zealand received this aircraft as their very first Airbus A320, and I always loved A320s, and it was Lord of the Rings hype. So when I saw that thing and I came back home, I thought like, I want this on my flight simulator, and it didn't exist. So I thought, come on, I'll do it myself, how hard can it be? So that means I started playing with PlaneMaker and X-Plane 8, trying to replicate that thing. And well, I was working at that time at Airbus in parallel, so I didn't really have that much time to do things. But then, 2008, I decided, come on, I'll do a PhD in flight controls, because I wasn't really impressed by what I was doing with my professional life up to then. And suddenly, I had a lot of time. So then, the development of the aircraft really took off, and the Airbus FlyByWire plugin, which we're still using today, started really to grow until in early 2009 we finally released the first freeware version of the QPAC A320. Anybody in the audience who still remembers that? Like that's, I mean, it's 15 years ago now. Anyway, so that was like a 2D panel, very basic 3D cockpit, but it had already a full-grown fly-by-wire system with all the protections in it. And yeah, that was really the start where we got going. Then any PhD ends at some point, so in 2012 I was finished with that. First kid was born, second kid was on the way, and then the big question was, okay, what am I gonna do now? I'm gonna have 2 kids, I'm gonna start working again. Is this actually gonna continue or is it gonna stop? But of course, I'm standing here today, so we did continue. And all of that led to the first release of our first payware product, the QPAC A320 version 2 in 2013. That was at that time for X-Plane 10. And it was still with a 2D panel. So what it looked like was this. Like, I mean, when you see, we've come quite a long way since then, I would think. So we had like this nice 2D panel with like pop-up pedestals and stuff like that, and that was a 3D on the outside, so not quite up to 2024 standards, I would say. Anyway, that was our start. Then this development slowly started to get better and better. We got a deal with Flight Factor to provide the FlyByWire and FMGS suite for their A350, which was initially released in 2014. And we had also made a deal with Flight Factor. Okay, we need to get the QPAC better. We want to have a full 3D model in it. So why don't you guys provide the 3D model for that? And that was planned at that time as a QPAC version 3. So however, QPAC version 3 never came to light because in 2017, due to unfortunate events, the person I worked with at QPAC unfortunately passed away. So we had to get out of that. We ended up founding our own company, Juliana being my wife and me. We founded ToLiss, we purchased the rights the QPAC had on our software from them, and from then on we started developing on our own, which finally ended after about 15 years after I started, with the very first ToLiss product, the A318 version 1.0 on the 28th of February in 2018. So since then, we've increased our portfolio a little bit. So we have 4 additional products to date. 2 years later, exactly to the day, we released the first A321. Then we came out with the A321neo add-on about 9 months later. That one allowed you to add like the Pratt & Whitney engines, the CFM LEAP. It also has the long range, the extra long range variant, so you can have all the different fuel configurations. If you select the XLR, you have 33 tons of fuel that you can put in. The regular A321 has like 18, so it's like a significantly higher amount. And also the door concept, if you've seen like A321neos, they exist with all kinds of weird doors. You can have 2 overwing exits, you can have 1 overwing exit, you can have a door behind the wings, you can have no door behind the wings, etc. We support all of that, so you can really configure the aircraft to the airline you are trying to fly. And then, after having done 2 single ALs, I thought like, okay, come on, it's time to do something bigger, a long-range aircraft. And my personal favorite, just from the looks of the airplane, from the aesthetics, has always been the 340-600. So we've decided to launch that one, and that one was finished October 25th, 2021. And that date actually is exactly 30 years anniversary of the first flight of the Airbus A340. That's how we picked our release date at that time. And then the most recent addition was, because we have the 319, which is a CEO, the 321 base package is also a CEO, so classic engine option. We've decided, okay, we also need to do the 320 Neo, so that you have somewhere where you just buy the one package and you get the full set of Neo engines. So we came out with the 320 Neo on March 20th, which, with a weird way the Americans write the dates, is 320, so that was our driver for that release date. And yeah, and that one has, besides the new engines, it also has a lot of newer avionics features like satellite landing system, FMS landing system, and many other things that you can enjoy in a real-life A320 Neo. So that's a bit the history of our company. Now I want to move to like what makes our product special, and one of the things we really focus on in our development is always the handling and the performance. So in order to get that right, in the meanwhile, since X-Plane 12, we've basically transitioned to having our own custom engine model. So rather than spending a lot of time tuning the X-Plane model and tuning it again and again every time X-Plane changes it, we said, look, we'll get independent of that, we do our own, then we can tune it exactly to all the data that we have, get exactly the right fuel burn, the exact right thrust per N1 for the different flight regimes. And most importantly, we are independent from other people changing things on their side. So our model is always going to give you the same result. Whether you fly an X-Plane 11 or an X-Plane 12, you'll get the exact same thrust, the exact same fuel flow, the exact same EGT, etc. And we really compute in the end. We take the airflow, we compute it through the cold duct using the compressor fields, as you can see up there on the right side. Do I manage to get the mouse there? Yeah. So we use this thing to compute really the flow through the duct here. Then we also compute the flow through the hot circuit in order to get like the bleed pressure, the EGT and things like that. And that really gives overall a very good, very realistic representation of the Airbus engines. And the second thing that we've also done, we had this for a long time in our products, is we have like a custom drag model. So I'm a big fan of the X-Plane flight physics, which is the reason why we're using X-Plane as our platform. But there are certain small deficiencies like any simulator has, and modeling, for example, the effect that your CD changes with Mach number is really difficult to do when you just use PlaneMaker. So we've decided, look, we use the X-Plane flight model, but we override it in those points where we think we can do better. And that's what we're doing here. So that gives you the correct drag, gives you the correct lift, we have the correct thrust, and with those things together, you automatically have the complete correct end-to-end performance from takeoff to landing. Your fuel burn for those conditions will be very, very close to what you get with a real aircraft that you fly with the same speed, same wind, etc. And then, of course, the handling component. We started developing this a long time ago. So our flight control laws have been improved based on pilot feedback for many times. So in the meanwhile, I'm fairly confident to say that the handling that our aircraft provides is as close as you can get on a desktop sim. Of course, your joystick always plays a big role. When you ask a pilot, depending on the joystick you put, he will have a very different experience, but the rest that's independent from the joystick is as close as you can get. The second part that I really like, because that's my professional background, I've been working at Bombardier in aircraft systems for 6 years, just before COVID hit, is the systems of the aircraft. So what we try to do is we're not just simulating the cockpit effect, we simulate the underlying physics. So like one of the advantages that gives, when you inject a fault and you have all the underlying physics correct, the effect of the fault downstream is going to be correct on its own. You don't need to worry about like, okay, when this happens, then I have to do this, then I have to do this, then I have to do this. It all happens automatically just based on the model. And pretty much most of our systems comply with that now. So whether you take the bleed system, the air conditioning, hydraulics, electric, they all are subject to this rule that we really have the underlying physics modeled in our aircraft. And then the third component is, of course, usability. A big one is situation load safe. We had that in our aircraft since the first release of the A319, so you can leave your flight, shut down your computer, 3 days later come back and say, I want to continue it. Or you can also say, I want to do this landing 1,000,000 times. So you can do it again and again and again until you get it right. And the situation safe, it's going to give you the aircraft in the exact state that you left it in. So the flight plan is going to be there. All the systems are going to be the exact same state that you had them before. There's nothing you need to configure again. Everything was the way you left it. And that comes also with the autosave. So if ever X-plane should crash, you can just say resume flight, and then it's going to continue from last autosave, which is a configurable time before the crash. So you can do, like, I normally have it set to every 5 minutes, but you can bring it down to every 1 minute if you want to. And then, of course, we always appreciate user feedback. Sometimes functions take a bit longer before they can actually make it into the thing. We all have to decide where we use our resources the best. But like people were asking for a CPDLC, so we started putting it in. We have an in-cockpit printer, where you can, like, for example, when you have your takeoff data, you can just print them with the printer. You can put the piece of paper in front of the thrust levers and you can see all your takeoff data there. Don't have to go into the MCDU for that. And we also have introduced this interactive audio control panel that you can use in order to fly without ever opening our menu, which is normally used. You can load the airplane, for example, through the menu. But you can also use the IACP. You can tell the cabin crew to chuck passengers out or add new passengers. You can tell the baggage loaders to add additional cargo, etc., through that little interface at the bottom. And when you look at the 3D model as it is today, all the sounds, and you compare with what we released initially 5 years ago, it's like also 2 worlds apart. So we work on that side all the time too in order to give you guys the best possible experience. One example I would like to give for how deep we go in the system simulation. I actually have 2 examples. We have to see the time for the second one. But one of the examples I would like to give for the first is the question of real data. That's what I see a lot in simulation, and as somebody who has worked in the real industry, you know that this is not realistic. In a simulator, you always get perfect data. So you look at your indicated airspeed, and that's exactly this indicated airspeed that the simulator currently simulates. In real life, that's not the case. In real life, whatever your speed indicator shows you is not going to be exact value. It's going to have an error. And that error is on any measurement. It's on CAS, it's on attitude, it's on altitude, it's on the position. Everything comes with an error. And this error, the one that we've modeled because it's the most dominant one, is called the offset error. So if you look here, you have the actual real value evolution. Then the air data computer for the calibrated airspeed, air data computer 1 is going to, for example, in this case, going to give you a slightly higher value. Can be that ADR 2 is going to give you a lower one. ADR 3, in this particular case, is the closest to the real thing, but the computer doesn't know that. The computer in the airplane only sees these 3 values, and it has to live with that because it doesn't know which one is the real one. And yeah, as I mentioned, this is called an offset error, and we model that on every sensor reading that you have in the real airplane because real aircraft have this effect too, and I think it's important to represent that in a simulation. So, and these are random. So like every time you start the airplane, we decide a bit differently what error is going to be on what reading. So your experience is going to be slightly different every time with respect to, has the co-pilot the higher altitude? Does the pilot have the higher altitude? Because this is what effectively happens. You can see here, you're flying the left PFD as co-pilot, as pilot, the right PFD is the co-pilot one. And you see the left, we have autopilot 1 engaged. So autopilot 1 means it closes the loop on all the pilot side data, which is why on the pilot PFD you see you're perfectly on spot on 250 knots and you're perfectly at 360, at flight level 360. The right side, however, thinks that our speed is a bit lower, so you're 248, and your height is a bit lower too. And again, this is something you will see in real airplanes also. The effect here is a bit like it's the most extreme I could find. Normally it's a bit less, but again, it's a random function, so each flight is going to be a bit different. And one thing that's important, also we apply the error at the actual measurement. So for like CAS and altitude, for example, we don't apply it on the speed that you see, we apply it at the pressure measurement. So we take, this is my total pressure, this is my static pressure, and then we derive everything you see from those values, just like it's done in the real airplane. And the advantage of doing it like that is if you say, this sensor always reads 0.1 millibar too high, the way how this error scales into your final reading is again automatically applied by the simulation. So, and as I mentioned before, each autopilot uses the on-site values for control. So if, in the scenario you see here, you switch from AP1 to AP2, you're going to see the airplane accelerate a little bit until the co-pilot PFD matches exactly the right values. And then fly-by-wire has a big question, which values it's supposed to use. And there we use the same voting algorithms you use in real airplanes for that, which then determine which of those 3 values is the one my fly-by-wire system is supposed to use for its closed-loop control. One example also where this is important is we provide satellite landing system functionality, and effectively what that does in real life, it reduces the error on your GPS position. Like if you have an unaugmented GPS, your position error can be 50, 60 meters, so you're landing next to the runway if you use it. With this SLS system, that error gets reduced to 1 meter, and that's exactly what happens in our airplane if you choose to do a SLS landing. As soon as it engages on this SLS, it's going to reduce the GPS accuracy to this 1 meter, and like that you're actually going to hit the runway as you would like to do. Okay, how much time do I have left, guys? 5 minutes? Okay, I might be able to make it to this because this is actually a very important feature too, and I have to do a little excursion into flight physics for that. We have a full actuator control hinge, actuator control surface model. So your control surfaces don't just work like the computer says, I want it at 20 degrees, and then you move it to 20 degrees and you leave it there. We actually have the full system model with the actuator and the surface attached to it. So, and for that, in order to go into details there, I just want to introduce 2 technical terms. What's a hinge moment? The hinge moment is effectively the aerodynamic forces trying to turn your surface around its location of rotation. The location of rotation is called the hinge line. And yeah, your aerodynamic forces, for example, in case of the wing, you have less pressure on the wing, more pressure below the wing. So the forces will try to push your ailerons up. So for example, in the case of an aileron, the actuator has to actively hold the aileron down, otherwise it's not going to be at the 0 position. And that force or moment, because it's a rotationary force, is called hinge moment. And the job of the actuator is really to bring up the hinge moment to get the surface where you want it to be. So the 2 takeaways from this is, there's one position, if I now cut the actuator away, the surface would move in response to the hinge moment to somewhere where that hinge moment doesn't exist anymore, right? Where the airflow is exactly where it floats to the position where the airflow wants it to be. That position is called the aerodynamic neutral position of the surface, and this is rarely 0. And so, and I checked that on how our airplanes does it and how other ones do it, and you'll see that when a surface gets disengaged, very often you'll see they just stay at 0. And that is not realistic, because when a surface is disengaged, it will always go to aerodynamic neutral. And a second thing that's important is the further I want to move my surface away from aerodynamic neutral, the more force that actuator has to do. It's pretty much a linear function actually. So twice the deflection means twice the required force from the actuator. So, and we model all of that. So we have even the surface weight and the inertia in it. So we have the actuator, which then we have hydraulic flow through the actuator, which then drives the force, and the force accelerates the surface to go, etc. And you really have a full second order system. And then at the end of that system, we close a loop around it. We drive the valve and the actuator to the right position until the surface is where it's supposed to be. And that system works reasonably well. So you guys as a user, you're not going to see it. So then the question is, why the heck did you do it if we as a user don't see it? And that's where it becomes interesting, because as soon as you have failures, there are going to be effects that you will see, which you cannot model without having this model in place. So if, for example, I fail one actuator in my elevator, and then you pull all the way, you'll see the surface is not going to go all the way, because the single actuator is physically not capable of bringing up the force to get it to a full deflection. And if you just have a basic model, your surface will go where you want it to go, but with our model it doesn't. And the second important thing is, if you have lost, for example, an aileron, both actuators are disengaged, it's not going to stay at 0, it's going to go up. And going up means less lift on that surface, and it also means a pitching moment. So it has an effect on the aircraft behavior. So this here is, for example, I failed the blue hydraulics, I failed ELAC 1, and in that case you lose the right aileron. And without this type of model, the aileron would just simply stay at the neutral position, but here you can see it has actually moved up to like 3-4 degrees trailing edge up, which has an impact on your performance, on your pitch balance, etc. The left one follows suit, but that's an active thing from the flight control system that tries to keep your wings level. So that's why you see the left aileron at the right position of the right aileron, but the physical effect of floating to aerodynamic neutral is visible here. And that's in cruise. If you go to lower speeds with higher angles of attack, this effect will be significantly more severe. Another bonus of this model is actually when you park the aircraft on the ground and you cut off all hydraulics, you always see the surfaces droop in real life. This model takes care of that for us. We don't need to have extra logic that went on ground and parked, droop the surfaces. All this happens on its own. And if you look at the rudder, depending on the direction that the wind is coming from, you'll see that on our aircraft the rudder either goes left or goes right, because again, this model takes care of all of this by applying the hinge moment that is induced by the wind onto the rudder surface. And the second case where this becomes really interesting is if you try dual hydraulic failures. So here I did a dual hydraulic failures and I didn't do the procedure, so I dropped the landing gear 200 knots, which on an Airbus gets you to direct low. And then I slowed down to my approach speed of 160. And that means my elevator, in order to maintain this attitude, is not zero, right? You can see on the elevator there, they actually deflected up, like the one elevator that's left is deflected up like 3 degrees. And I didn't use manual trim. And when you look at the pressures, there was a pressure before, sorry, I'm already at 50% load just to maintain flight. You can't flare anymore, there's no authority left. So the landing in this scenario was pretty shitty. I had 3000 PSI, you can see like full power on the actuator. This is how far the elevator got. It didn't get to the stop and the airplane didn't flare. If on the other end you do the procedure and you trim out your elevator that it is at zero, you will be able to flare. And again, these are effects you can only model when you go to this level of detail. Otherwise, you won't see these effects on your simulator. The last one, I think he wants me to get finished. Another one, it's not unique anymore, but it was unique when we came out, is the situation safe, as I mentioned before. This is the airplane dark and in the cold and dark state. I said, okay, loads tutorial section 5. It loads and it has everything. It has the entire flight plan, it has the engines in the same state, the APU, hydraulics, electrics, everything is in the state that it is supposed to be, or that it was in when I saved the tutorial section 5 complete situation file a year ago, actually. And the big question, what is gonna be our next airplane? So these are all the Airbus aircraft with fly-by-wire that exist. These are the ones that we have done. The Flight Factor A350, we've already publicly announced that we will work with Flight Factor to get that one, so they'll get our systems, but it will be Flight Factor for like EFB and 3D model. And pretty much it's going to be one of the other ones. That's as much as I can tell you. Okay.
That is such a tease.
Sorry.
It's one of these Airbus aircraft. Amazing. Thank you very much. From Torsten, from ToLiss. Unfortunately, we don't have any time for a Q&A, but what I would recommend maybe you doing is just hanging out outside of the auditorium. And for anyone who does have a question for Torsten, please please feel free to come and find him and ask him any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So thank you very much to ToLiss. Please do hang around. We do have a very special seminar coming up next. We have the FlyByWire Simulations team coming on stage doing a live flight on VATSIM. So anything could happen. Who knows? But please do stick around. We're just going to spend a few minutes now setting up the stage in preparation for that, and we'll be right back.
I'm back. Hello everyone, welcome to the FSElite Theatre. My name is Callum, and I'm so glad that you are all here today to witness what is going to be a really cool little seminar. We've not done this yet during the show, but it should be good fun. So over the last few days, we've been doing seminars in here where we've introduced kind of single products or single applications to people. But with flight simulation, the world does kind of work best when you start to combine all of these services and all these products into one kind of ecosystem. And that's really what today is going to be all about. So we have a team of two teams of incredible people here today. So we have the VATSIM team, and we've also got the FlyByWire Simulations team as well. And what they're going to do is they're going to demonstrate to you a full A320 flight on VATSIM. So anything could happen in this flight, but it's going to be a really experience. And whilst they're doing that as well, you're also going to get some really cool key information about how that does work as well. So without further ado, we've got some fantastic guests in the corner, and then we've also got our two leads to come on stage as well. So please put your hands together for them.
Hello, hello. Okay. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I'm David, representing VATSIM today, and I'm joined today by...
My name is Valentin. I'm representing the FlyByWire side on this live flight today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and so today, obviously, we'd like to welcome you on board our flight, FlyByWire, departing from Groningen, or Eelde, and inbound to Rotterdam, flown by our pilot flying, Aaron. And joining is pilot monitoring, Dmitry. Please welcome them. So obviously over the past 2 days, like Callum said, we've seen a lot of different things. Amongst them, FlyByWire has been on stage yesterday, previewing the A380. But I mean, just for the basics and just for the people that don't know, Valentin, what is FlyByWire?
Yeah, I'll just introduce our team real quickly. So we are an organization of freeware contributors who are working on developing an A320 Neo for Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's a project that started by improving basically the default A320 Neo for MSFS. And it's grown basically from there. We started out making small improvements and just changing little things here and there. But I think it's really grown into a large community of people contributing code and people writing documentation and a bunch of different people coming together and providing their expertise in different areas in order to make this a really cool product, I think. And we're excited to show you this in this live demonstration.
Very nice. And so FlyByWire's star product, the A32NX. First of all, how much does it cost?
It's entirely free. I'm happy to report that. Yeah, and it will stay free.
Yep, that's great. Obviously, I think it's quite amazing to see that we have such high quality freeware tools available. So obviously, we have the FlyByWire A32NX, but also VATSIM. Obviously, that's what I came to talk about today. VATSIM is also a freeware tool, and you don't need to pay anything if you want to join VATSIM. It's completely free. It's for those of you that don't know, it's a virtual air traffic simulation network that is designed to connect pilots and air traffic controllers, virtual air traffic controllers, where they are able to control the pilots. But if we just, well, obviously we're starting up the flight here by the looks of it. So if we just talk a bit about the aircraft that is loading up right now, what are some of the new features, or what are some of the features or new features that have been featured in the A32NX lately?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've been working on actually that some of you might have noticed is we've been working on a further improvement to the flight model, specifically the behavior in the flare, which is basically the very last stage of the flight just before you touch down. And it's a very interesting thing because it's something that's very characteristic to the Airbus and the Airbus A320 specifically. And we really worked quite hard with a bunch of pilots, real A320neo pilots and engineers who've been able to provide us very valuable feedback in order to get the feeling just before you touch down right, and as you would expect it from the real aircraft. So yeah, I think it's really exciting, and I encourage everyone to give it a go and yeah, try it out.
And what are you looking to develop in the future? What is the roadmap looking like?
Yeah, so I think one of the things I've been working very hard on is the new version of the FMS, the Flight Management System. So maybe for those people that don't know, the Flight Management System is basically an automation system on the aircraft that pilots use to program in their route, and they'll be able to rely on their flight management system to guide the autopilot along from their origin to their destination, alongside a bunch of other things. And one of the things I've been working on with the new version of this flight management system is that the pilot will not just be able to fly from their route to their destination, but will also be able to program in a route from their destination to an alternate destination in case things go wrong. They will also be able to fly the missed approach procedures if they have to abort their approach and go around. And all of these things that really make the Airbus what it is, and a very futuristic airplane and a very modern airplane, and with all the features that people would expect. So we've been working very hard on this, and we hope that we can make it public very soon.
Yeah, because I think it's quite incredible how a huge difference to flying in real life versus flying on the sim is that a lot of the, I mean, in real life, typical A320, you have two pilots, pilot flying, pilot monitoring. But on VATSIM, no, well, not on VATSIM, just in flight sim in general, it's typically just one pilot doing everything, right? One pilot having to click all the buttons, having to talk to air traffic control, etc. So it's quite good that you have that you're going to be working on new features that is going to be able to relieve, I guess, the main pilot flying from that.
Indeed, I think you bring up a very good point. I think it's something that is a very useful tool to the pilot, but also a tool that people should familiarize themselves with and how to use it, because it's not just an assistance feature that you can turn on and take your hands off and sip your coffee. It's something that you have to understand and something that you have to know how to use. And what it helps you do is not just lean back, as I said. What it helps you do is focus on maybe some of the more long-term things instead of focusing on flying the airplane in a straight line. It allows you to prepare for what's to come, especially when you're on a virtual air traffic control network like VATSIM, where it's always good to think ahead and maybe think of what radio call you're going to get next, or what the controller is going to tell you to do next. And I think that's really how the automation features like an autopilot, like an auto thrust system are meant to be used. Yeah.
And talking about preparing for your flight and just preparing things, we have just connected to the VATSIM network, as you can see. What you saw there was vPilot, which is the main pilot client, I guess the most known pilot client used on VATSIM for Microsoft Flight Simulator at least. So we've just connected. Our flight call sign is FlyByWire 32. Now, just to speed things up, we don't have too much time. Just to speed things up, we were on the stand already with our engines on, and we want to try to move on quicker. So what we see to my right, actually, is we have the EFB, and we've just imported the flight plan. Now, I understand correctly that the flight plan was generated on SimBrief, Navigraph's flight planning feature.
That is indeed correct, and one of the things that we've also done in order to speed up this whole setup process is that we've used one of the aircraft state presets in the FlyByWire A32X. So what you saw one of the pilots do is, as you can see here, they just press the ready for taxi button, and automatically all of the systems that you will need to set up will be set up automatically. So it only takes a few seconds, and it's very great if you need to save time, if you maybe don't have time for an entire flight and the entire setup, and it will make sure that everything's set up correctly. And maybe jumping off of what you said with the SimBrief, what you can also do in the FlyByWire A32X is actually uplink your flight plan from SimBrief directly into the aircraft. So the navigation system that I talked about earlier, you can basically at the press of a button, you can load your entire SimBrief plan into the flight management system, which is actually similar to ACAR's features that the real aircraft would have.
Yeah, I mean, realism is one thing, but when you have a wife or mother that is going to call you for dinner at 7, then it might be a good idea to speed things up sometimes, no?
Indeed, yeah. I think that's one of the great things about flight simulation is that, you have these systems that can help you really basically perform your hobby, even if you have limited time.
Yeah. You spoke a bit about the feature of being able to uplink your flight plan to the MCDU, or the McDo, some people like to call it. So that's just one of many features that enhance the automation and also allow a smoother experience. I thought a bit about some of the features that are available specifically for VATSIM, right? What automation features are available to increase your VATSIM, what's the word, to improve your VATSIM experience?
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of features in the FMS that have arrived in the FlyByWire A32Next that especially VATSIM pilots have been very happy about. And to maybe name one specifically, it's the feature to let the aircraft automatically hold. So fly a holding pattern at a specific waypoint. I know I've certainly flown into Amsterdam on VATSIM, and it's very common to get a holding pattern assigned there. And I don't know if who of you is a real pilot, but flying a holding pattern, I'm not a real pilot, but I can imagine that flying a holding pattern manually is a lot of hard work, especially when you're a single pilot. And so I think that's a fantastic feature to help pilots, especially also get started faster on VATSIM if they are just getting into flight simulation and they want to get started on the VATSIM network. It's good to have a feature like that in your flight management system because it can really help you and relieve some of the workload and help you prepare for you know, the later situations.
Yeah, and I actually remember. You mentioned a very good point, because I remember I started out on VATSIM and generally flight simulation in about 2016, 2017. And I remember at the time, we had a lot of freeware aircraft, and I flew on FSX at the time. But everyone said, oh, but if you want to fly properly on VATSIM, if you want to use if you want to be able to actually fly navigationally correctly, you need to buy a payware aircraft. And I think that's been sort of the gist of VATSIM for quite a long time. So the fact that, the fact that the fly-by-wire, a freeware aircraft, has to feature, is able to feature a lot of these different things, for example, or things that you wouldn't get from a freeware aircraft, holding, for example, better navigational capabilities. I think that's an extraordinary thing that we're able to get that from a freeware aircraft, and no less something that is developed by such a dedicated team of volunteers that aren't really getting paid for this.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's just as much as, you know, people on fly-by-wire like me like making these planes and like seeing people's reactions. And I think it's one of the things that's really great about an event like FSWeekend. You get to actually see a lot of people flying the planes and people being really enthusiastic and really, you know, complimenting the plane. And, you know, it warms my heart. And I think it's just as much a hobby for us that we just like doing. For me personally, I like working on the plane, and I like seeing all of these automation features come to life myself. You know, I'm a very novice VATSIM pilot, but it's something that I do enjoy, and I think it's something that's really cool about representing an Airbus like this. And I think it's always been kind of sort of our motto and our passion to make this really as a high fidelity product and make it as realistic as possible.
Yeah. So, Aaron, Dimitri, how are we doing? Oh, we just we're just ready soon, in a few minutes, I'm guessing. We're going to be calling up for clearance. I'm not sure which ATC is currently online. Just to, I guess, give you guys an overview a bit of ATC, and the ATC specifically here at FSWeekend. Dutch VCC, the Dutch part of VATSIM, is currently having a stand in one of the, they're having a stand here in one of the buildings, and they're controlling from here. So I think, I'm not sure if all of the voices that we're gonna be hearing are gonna be from the same building, but at least some of the voices that you hear, you can actually meet those people in the neighboring room, actually, I think maybe even. So I think that's something nice. If you guys want to check it out, you can go visit their stand if you want to ask questions or see even what the scope looks like and to see, you know, how we operate. You can have a look at that.
Yeah, so maybe as they're just setting up the aircraft.
I think I know what's going on. I think we need to pre-file a flight plan because that's probably something that's not done. So obviously, in all stages of flight, just in general in aviation, you always need to follow a flight plan, both in the real world and on VATSIM as well. And this is actually what the pre-filing page looks like, just behind these windows. You file your basic flight plan, destination, just flight information. And I think you can see that actually all of this is already filled in. That's because SimBrief has an amazing feature where you're able to click a button, pre-file your flight plan right here, and it automatically pre-files your flight plan. There's 2 or 3 clicks of buttons. But we were talking about SimBrief a lot, and SimBrief is obviously a product from Navigraph. And you can see you've got some remarks here. We love ATC, towards the end I see as well. But Navigraph then. You guys have been working a bit with Navigraph and implementing Navigraph into your EFB. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, exactly. So Navigraph, for those who don't know, is a company that provides navigation data and navigational charts for flight simulation. If you've not seen their product, an instrument chart or a navigation chart, as I mentioned, is basically what tells pilot where to fly, how to fly, their procedures. And it is something that is, of course, very important to the real world. Air traffic control rely on pilots consulting charts and making sure they're aware of how the procedures work. And just like that, Navigraph have quite an inexpensive option of obtaining charts that you can use for flight simulation in order to once again increase immersion like you do with an air traffic control network like VATSIM.
Yeah. Obviously, you mentioned Navigraph is an... yeah, we have ATC just coming up. We are starting to hear some ATC sound. But you mentioned that Navigraph is an inexpensive product. So you still have to pay for it, unfortunately. Well, not unfortunately. I think it's an amazing product. But we all know that we have... I think we've all been in a situation where some of us haven't been able to purchase a subscription. When I was 13 years old, my budget was quite limited from what I got from my parents. So some of the free features that are available to VATSIMers, for chart specifically, there's one service that I'm aware of, it's called ChartFox as well. It's an alternative to Navigraph. I think you get a lot of amazing features with Navigraph, a lot of good integrations, but ChartFox is one of the features that is available that is a free alternative to Navigraph. Yeah, just so that you guys are aware of that.
Yeah, indeed. I think we're getting more and more ready for this flight, and I think it's soon going to be the... Okay, I think it's, as you can see, the frequency is getting more and more busy. Maybe
us getting the clearance now.
Awesome. You heard it there first. That was our crew getting their ATC clearance from the air traffic control. Why don't you tell us about what that clearance contained, maybe, for those unfamiliar?
The clearance contains, first of all, information on where you're going. You're clear to destination. We're going to Rotterdam. We got a departure instruction, so SID, the procedure that we're going to fly outbound from Groningen. And we could have gotten a runway, but we know pretty much what runway we're going to depart based on either the ATIS or even the SID. You know, if you're using Navigraph charts, you can see that most of the time, at least in Europe, the SID will correspond to a specific runway. We could have gotten an initial flight level, so initial flight level to maintain. We're ready for pushback now as well.
FlyByWire 3 to Roger, the start is approved. Runway 23, Q&A 1020.
Roger, start approved, and we have already started up request taxi.
FlyByWire 3 to Roger, taxi to Holland Point, Sierra Mont, runway 23, via Alpha.
Sierra 123, via Alpha, FlyByWire 32.
So there we got a startup clearance, we're already started up, so we got the taxi clearance immediately. We're taxiing now, just starting our taxi to runway 23. But just to finish off real quick, so that clearance contained an initial flight level to maintain, and last but not least, a squawk for the aircraft to maintain. That is... I'm not sure if we got Squawk 1000 or another Squawk, but basically it allows ATC to identify us. So we're just starting out our rollout, our taxi here. and we're probably going to be doing some checklists, but you know more about that than I do, Valentin.
Yeah, so I don't know if our pilots have the checklist, are using the checklist in the electronic flight bag, which is our EFB, the tablet on the left, or if they have paper checklists available. But in any case, it's one of the features that we also have in the EFB, the checklist that real Airbus pilots would use and that Airbus actually publishes to fly the Airbus. Now, what I should say is that a checklist is not a complete guide on how to start up and fly the aircraft, actually. For that, you'll have to look into other documentation, which brings me to the next point of our document.
Are you ready?
1 second.
FlyByWire 3, clear for takeoff. Wind, 130 degrees, 10 knots.
FlyByWire 3, clear for takeoff, FlyByWire 3.
So, our takeoff clearance, we are now clear for takeoff, runway 23. And after departure, then we follow the SID, Standard Instrument Departure Procedure, that is assigned by ATC. But how do we actually, how do pilots know what to follow? How do pilots know how to follow this SID? What tools do they have available?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's it brings back.
Oh, we've lost our microphone, I think. Oh,
sorry about that. At the end of the day, it brings me back to the navigational charts that I mentioned earlier. So the pilots will check the charts on Navigraph or ChartFox or whatever they find the charts, which describes essentially what procedure to fly. And they'll certainly brief that with each other. They'll talk about what they do, and they'll make sure that the flight management computer, the flight management system, which will guide the pilots where to fly to follow the procedure, is set up correctly, and that all of the waypoints that you want to fly to are actually programmed correctly.
Cool. Right. We are lined up for departure. Time is started. We are rolling. Mantoga. SRS runway to thrust blue. Oh, that's not my job to say, but said it anyway.
Second nature at this point.
Second nature. I was in one of the simulators today, and I kept saying it. So for this flight is quite a short flight, but I want to talk about a feature called CPDLC. Now I understand it correctly that you guys have it. I was visiting one of the demos for another aircraft today. And I was checking whether or not they have CPDLC implemented, and not yet, at least. But why don't you tell me about CPDLC?
Yeah, so I'm really hoping I'm going to get the acronym right. I think CPDLC is Controller Pilot Data Link Communication System. Maybe you can correct me on that. But what it is it's in simple words, it's kind of like text messaging for pilots. And instead of, as you heard before, talking to...
FlyByWire 32, contact yield approach, 120.305, tot ziens.
120.305, FlyByWire 32.
Awesome. That was them getting handed off to the next frequency, who is also going to be a staff position. But yeah, just quickly, CPDLC is a way for pilots and air traffic control to communicate with each other without relying on text communication. Instead, it's done via this little...
FlyByWire 32, Delta, passing by level 3.
FlyByWire 32, yield approach, good afternoon, identified.
Instead, this CPDLC is done via this display that you can see at the bottom of the screen. And as we said, we're not using it on this flight because it's a very short flight, but the FlyByWire A32NX supports it together with the air traffic control clients.
From a controller's perspective, I've actually spoken to a real-world controller.
FlyByWire 32, contact Amsterdam radar, 125.750, have a good flight.
Second frequency, FlyByWire 32.
25.
FlyByWire 32, say again the frequency.
Amsterdam radar, 125.750, bye-bye.
Amsterdam 125.750, bye-bye, FlyByWire 32.
So now we have a frequency change to Amsterdam radar.
Clear the Raccoon to Alpha and 18 right, approaching towards Skidmore and the 3250.
So what you heard a few times today is people getting handed off between different frequencies, so from one air traffic control sector to another. And it's really impressive to see because that's, of course, exactly what you would expect in real life. There's many positions. Now, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about which positions are also staffed on VATSIM compared to real life. Can I expect all positions to be staffed, or?
Very good question. So obviously, all VATSIM air traffic controllers are complete volunteers.
Goeiedag, FlyByWire 22, inbound DIFPA, flight level 70.
Just checking in with Amsterdam here. And just like Amsterdam Radar, who is sitting in the neighboring building, he is also a volunteer.
0 and for 3 Romeo arrival. It's possible to get vectors for the ILS?
Over your requesting the ILS?
Affirm vectors for the ILS 24.
Roger, expect ILS for the
Roger.
So we have now our arrival clearance, our star clearance, and we would also like to get some vectors for arrival. But no, like I said, all VATSIM air traffic controllers are complete volunteers. So because of that, you don't always find air traffic controllers online. When they're not online, people are on what's known as a Unicom frequency. There's no ATC. You fly at your own discretion. However, we have what's known as events. These events are specific events featuring maybe one airport or maybe two airports where you fly from A to B, or maybe it's got you've got an area covering multiple airports that is being staffed. So in these events, you're guaranteed to get air traffic control, and there's quite a lot of pilots or quite a lot of aircraft that are expected on these events. It's an amazing opportunity to get staffed, to get ATC staffing, and typically they also happen during I guess, evenings and during the weekends when people have free time. And to add as well, we have something also known as top-down. I'm not going to get too much into detail about that, but basically the way it works is a center controller can be covering the approach and ground and tower positions top-down when those other positions aren't online, so that we can get more ATC coverage for the pilots flying.
So you mentioned that all of these VATSIM air traffic controllers are actually volunteers. How does one even get started to man a position like this?
Very good question. It's very easy to get started. All you need is a VATSIM account and I guess good motivation to learn. If you want to get started, you need to join a division, maybe a subdivision of VCC or an RTEC. So you pick a place where you want to start. For example, it could be the Netherlands, Dutch VCC you could join. Let's say I join the Dutch VCC, then you start ATC training, you start to train from the ground up. You first learn how to control delivery and then ground. The training, again, is completely free and it's run by volunteers. But there's a lot of resources that are available, and all you really need to have is good motivation, and you'll be on your way to becoming one of the voices on frequency.
That is fantastic to hear. So one of the earlier air traffic control calls that you heard was them getting their arrival information. So I think if I heard it correctly, they're getting radar vectors. So that's basically air traffic control telling them what directions to fly in order to get them aligned with the instrument landing system, the ILS. And I think today, maybe something we can talk about today, the weather conditions are quite good, to my knowledge, in Rotterdam. But one of the features that you have in the FlyByWire A32NX, when the weather is not so good, is that you can let the aircraft auto-land. The aircraft can actually land itself on an instrument landing system. So that's definitely very good if you know, you're maybe not so confident in the visibility at your destination. You can just set up the aircraft to land itself.
I think I can say without any shame that during my first year of flying, maybe 90% of my landings were done on autoland. Probably one of the reasons I'm not so good at my landings today. But, yeah. Cool. So that's not a call for us, but you can see then we have programmed in the arrival, the standard arrival route, which we got, as you said, we got earlier. And it's, yeah, we mentioned already that it's very important, obviously, to be able to fly them on the VATSIM network, and it's important to have the
vectors for the ILS 2 for FlyByWire 32, thank you.
Yeah, and we have vectors. We expected vectors in. So I want to talk a bit about if you're a new pilot and want to join. So I guess we talked a bit about VATSIM, but what resources do new pilots have available if they want to get started flying the FlyByWire 320?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I brought it up a bit earlier already. We have a fantastic resource available. It's a beginner's guide to people wanting to learn the FlyByWire A32X. It basically teaches you all of the setup, all of the things that you've seen so far in text form, and there's a lot of pictures, and it teaches you how to do things like get the navigation charts, find departure frequencies. All of these things are basically in the form of this text guide that is available on our website, flybywiresim.com, and it will basically teach you the entire setup step by step. And I think one of the things that's really good to do is, take your time to set up the airplane and try to fly all of this. And you can even go through it maybe multiple times if you're not sure about certain things here and there. And then at the end of the day, if you still have questions, I'd like to advertise our Discord server a little bit, the FlyByWire Discord server. We have a fantastic community of many people and even real-life pilots that are able to provide very valuable assistance in people wanting to learn to fly the A32NX, and that can provide very valuable insights into real-life procedures as well, actually.
I think it's quite amazing how we have such an amazing community that is able to provide all of this help and support, and that is generally very friendly to new pilots that want to join. I can definitely say the same for VATSIM. Our VATSIM members are quite accommodating to new members, especially VATSIM air traffic controllers as well. A lot of new pilots are scared of ATC, but everyone has to start somewhere. So our controllers are quite accommodating. But other than that, I want to talk a bit about what resources VATSIM has available other than that. On VATSIM, we have, for example, what's known as the Pilot Learning Center, as it's now called. The Pilot Learning Center has a lot of different tools, but also a lot of different guides available. Not just on radio communication, not just for radio communication on the actual network, but also some general aviation knowledge that you could learn if you want to learn that. Other than that, we have what's known as First Wings. Now, First Wings is a series of events that is hosted at least once a month. That is which has a focus on trying to help new pilots get better and get more confident on the network. It's hosted in different parts of the world on VATSIM. And if you want to learn more about different, I guess, new things that you can check, let me start again. If you want to learn more about the different things that VATSIM has to offer for new pilots, you can visit the website, vatsim.net. And you can also join the VATSIM community server. There's a lot of different useful information there. There's also a channel called VATSIM SOAR, which has a lot of interesting tips and facts about certain specific procedures that could be useful to learn. So,
I don't know, David, I think things are getting serious here. I just heard them getting handed off to the approach controller, who is, as far as I know, going to vector them, give them headings to the final approach, the instrument landing system, and I think the pilots have just set up the MCDU for their approach. They've put in a bunch of information that the plane needs to compute the correct approach speeds, for example, compute a descent profile, all of these things that will help the pilots conduct the approach.
And how do you know what you need to put in? Like, where do you get all this information? And is it always the same numbers, or do the numbers change? Or?
Sadly, it's not always the same numbers, no. But it's a good question, because there's different ways you can get information and different things you need to put in. So one of the things you put in is your...
Checking in with approach.
Hello, expect runway 24.
2432. Perfect, so they just got assigned the runway, which brings me to the point that one of the things you have to tell the flight management computer is the wind. This is what the aircraft uses to give the correct approach speed, and where you would find that typically is from some weather service. Pilots use meteorological information called the METAR or the ATIS, which gives pilots the winds, temperature, pressure setting at their destination. And one of the things you can do in the FlyByWire A32X is that you can check all of this information on the EFB again. So there's a little widget where you can put in your arrival, destination, airport code, and it will give you all of the information that you need to program into the computer in order to tell the plane what is about to happen, basically.
It's always very useful to have good sources of information available. So it's very good that we have that available with all these different tools that you mentioned. So we are inbound to land. And by the way, throughout the course of my phone fell out, but that's fine. Throughout the course of the presentation, if anyone has any questions, we can maybe take a question every now and then. Any questions from the stage? Any questions from YouTube? No? Sorry? Oh.
I think that's gentleman. Figure 5 Victor Charlie, Vector ILS, when it right, information Lima, descent flight level 40.
Question for you?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So, to my knowledge, I'm not really a pilot, but I think in commercial operations, the autopilot is indeed used commonly during the cruise section, particularly. There's actually a section of airspace called RVSM airspace, which is the airspace above 29,000 feet, I think, where the use of the autopilot is required, because of course the autopilot is very good at what it's doing, and it can navigate very accurately. And what you can do is basically you can space planes much more tightly if you can rely on everyone having an autopilot that can fly precisely. And so for a lot of routes which go over this altitude of 29,000 feet, the use of autopilot is required basically in the cruise. When you turn on and off the autopilot is, I think, usually up to pilots' discretion to a certain degree. Some pilots prefer hand flying. Maybe if you fly 4 sectors back and forth to different cities, you prefer to use the autopilot a little bit more. Sometimes you connect the autopilot a little bit earlier. Sometimes you disconnect a little bit later. So in that sense, it's up to pilots. But I think during the cruise, for the most part, in commercial operations, the autopilot is used very commonly.
Yeah, very good question. Right, so I think as you were speaking, we were getting an instruction. So I think it was just a descent instruction. So we are now descending into Rotterdam, following the arrival here. Yeah. So obviously a very, very busy frequency there with, I think it's Amsterdam approach we are talking to right now. And yeah.
So maybe you can talk a little bit more about what an air traffic controller's thought process is in guiding all of these aircraft to the correct instrument landing system. What is there to learn? From a very naive point of view, it's hard for me to imagine what an air traffic controller's thought process is in getting all of these aircraft safely to their destination.
Good question. So there's a lot of different air traffic control positions, which means every one air traffic controller could be doing something completely different to another one. I guess if we go by the process from bottom to top, we start with the delivery controller that has to give clearances to the aircraft. So then the delivery controller usually checks whether or not everything is okay with the flight plan, whether or not the route is okay, whether or not there's any amendments that need to be done, and then just plans how he's going to give the clearance to the next controller. To the pilot. The ground controller needs to be able to sequence aircraft for the departure of fleet. Getting a hand over here. But the ground controller needs to be able to obviously safely taxi other aircraft to the runway and also taxi arrival aircraft.
FlyByWire 32 inbound, Pampus flight level 50.
FlyByWire 32 Rotterdam approach, hello, after Papa Alpha Mike, fly heading 200, radar vectors for ILS, runway 24.
After Pampus heading 200, radar vectors for 24, FlyByWire 32.
So we have a radar vector to follow after Papa Alpha Mike. We're just going to pre-select that and prepare that. But as I was saying, a ground controller needs to be able to taxi a departing aircraft out, and there's a certain thought process to that. You need to be able to logically sequence aircraft so that when they take off, they don't interfere each other in a way. It's kind of difficult to explain, but that actually gets me to the role of a tower controller. Has two roles: safely depart aircraft, safely land aircraft, because the tower controller has authority over the runways. So when departing aircraft, the tower controller needs to make sure that two aircraft don't crash into each other, but also when they depart, but also that they do not cause any conflicts after they depart. If you have, for example, two planes that are going the same way in the same airport, same destination, then it's important to space them out a bit more so that they don't cause a conflict, so that they're not too close to each other once they are in the air. And then it's pretty simple for arrivals. It's to make sure that landing aircraft don't crash into other landing aircraft or departing aircraft, and to give landing clearances in due time. So then we get to the radar part.
Descend to flight level 40, transition level.
Descend flight level 40, FlyByWire 32.
Descent instruction there. So obviously now we are talking to a departure or approach controller. The departure or approach controller has to sequence arrivals in and make sure that they have a nice space, a good enough space in between them, which is known as sequencing. Departure controller or an aircraft controller controlling departures has to make sure that departures do not interfere with anything else. And lastly, we get to radar or center or controller, whatever you like to call it, covering the en route part of the flight. Pretty simple as well, to make sure that there's no collision going on with, there's no risk of collision. So you asked me what an air traffic controller looks for. Again, there's different things, but for a radar controller, I would say you're always scanning the picture, you're always analyzing it to see if anything needs to be done, if a new instruction needs to be given, and also checking whether or not there's going to be a conflict coming up soon.
Very good. Thank you so much for the explanation. Maybe I can give a little bit more insight into what a pilot might be doing at this stage of the flight. So they're preparing for the approach. That includes different things. So I talked about the instrument landing system earlier, and one of the things they will be doing very carefully is checking that they have set up the instrument landing system. Is checking that they've set up the instrument landing system correctly. So that includes the frequency basically of the guidance beam that they'll be using for landing. Furthermore, they'll of course check the lateral and vertical trajectory of the aircraft. So something known as energy management, which is basically making sure you get the aircraft down at a reasonable speed, at a reasonable altitude to intercept this landing system and effectively land at your destination. So that's something they'll be focusing on at this point. And of course, here you need a little bit of coordination between controller and pilot, because a pilot might not know what the controller's intentions are, and the controller has to rely on the pilot's ability to correctly execute the instructions in order to sequence and space all the aircraft correctly, as you mentioned.
Sounds like a lot of things on the plate of a pilot, which I guess brings you back to the point of how it's very important to, when you do have it available, have two pilots available in the cockpit. But when you don't, either you have to manage everything yourself, or you can use some of the amazing assisting tools that you guys are obviously working on.
Yeah, so one of the things that we, not so recently anymore at this point, but one of the things that we worked really hard on was the vertical navigation capabilities. And I think looking at the screens, one of the things that you can see is on the MCDU, they're just activating the approach phase.
Navigation to Adwit, cleared ILS approach, runway 24.
Direct Adwit, cleared ILS 24, FlyByWire 32.
This is actually a good example. Things that I was going to mention is the vertical navigation capability. So at all points during the flight, the plane basically calculates a vertical that the pilots can follow for a very efficient flight, and something that people or pilots will look at in order to judge their energy and judge the vertical profile is this green dot that you can see on the primary flight display. This is what the aircraft thinks the plane, the altitude the plane thinks you should be at in order to follow this basically most efficient trajectory. And it's a very useful tool for pilots to judge their energy situation, as we say, or basically where they are vertically and where they have to be in order to land the plane safely.
It's, I think it both sounds complicated, but it's actually pretty simple when you come to think of it. So, we are now cleared for the ILS. We are flying direct to Adwit, which is the initial approach fix for the ILS bridge procedure for runway 24. So, in other words, you could say that that's where officially the ILS starts. I'm not quite sure if we are already on the localize and the glide slope. Definitely not on the glide slope. I don't know if you can see.
It's a bit hard to see from
It's
here.
a bit hard to see.
I fully trust our pilots that they've
Yeah,
managed to
of
intercept
course.
the localizer.
Of course, of course. So from then, they will be using the ILS system to guide themselves down to the runway. Obviously, information on the ILS, about the ILS is available on the chart. Again, available via the Navigraph EFB integration. So, what's the process going to be like? Because I understand that landing is a critical stage of flight, as they like to say.
Very much so. I agree with that. That's a good statement. Yeah. So I think we'll see how Aaron does. I think I've seen him land a plane. He can definitely land a plane. You know, I think landing is one of those things that really needs practice at the end of the day. There's, of course, guides, and we describe how to land the plane. But at the end of the day, it just takes a little bit of practice. And now all landings will be equally good. Not all landings will be you'll be equally happy with as a pilot. I think you just need a little bit of patience and maybe a little bit of not losing your motivation to fly when you botch a landing. I certainly botched many landings. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that you have to be prepared when you're learning the aircraft. And there's a lot of things going on. For example, as they're landing, pilots may already be thinking about the next steps, as a good pilot should do. Because of course, as soon as they land, there might be more air traffic control instructions, like that from that ground position that you talked about earlier, who will be giving instructions to the pilot about where to park and what taxiways to take. And there's going to be a whole lot of other traffic, which is a part of flying that's also...
Confirm established on the localizer.
Affirm, localizer established, FlyByWire 32.
There you go. So you just heard it that they are...
Contact Rotterdam Tower 118.205.
Tower 118.205 by FlyByWire 32.
They are indeed established on the localizer, and I think they'll be established on the glide slope, which is the vertical part of the ILS, guiding them towards the runway.
FlyByWire 32 established ILS 24.
FlyByWire 32, goedendag. Runway 24, clear to land. Wind 150 degrees, 1 knot.
24 clear to land, FlyByWire 32.
Just checked in with the tower controller there, who's given them their landing clearance.
So, we are clear to land, and we are inbound. So, Valentin, you talked about the fact that, you're always learning, you're always preparing, but you're always learning. I actually thought about one thing that I didn't mention, that is available on VATSIM that I'd like to mention, and that is pilot training. Pilot training is a feature that we have, on VATSIM, which consists of what's known as ATOs, Authorized Training Organizations. They are basically organizations within VATSIM or communities where you can go and improve your flying if you're not so sure about that. If you're a bit insecure, I guess, about your flying. I know I am. So there's different things that you can do within the ATO. You can get different pilot ratings, just like in real life. You can get your PPL, and you start off very basic. I remember I was doing a session with an instructor with an ATO, where I was being taught how to properly do VFR circuits or VFR patterns, which I didn't know how to do. So I would strongly recommend, if you're interested, to join a VATSIM ATO and improve your knowledge or improve your skills through that.
Very good. I think it's an excellent tool, and I think you should definitely check it out. Now, you mentioned that you've also flown VFR, so visually on VATSIM. Is there any restrictions to the type of flying that I can do on VATSIM or the type of aircraft? Can you tell us a little bit more about that, maybe?
I can, of course. So, first of all, you can fly anywhere in the world. There's no restrictions like, oh, you can't fly in this country, you can't fly in that country. You can fly anywhere in the world, anywhere that you would like. You can fly in any plane that you, well, I say any plane, you don't want to fly the Dark Star, that is an imaginary plane from Top Gun, Maverick. No, you can fly any plane that you can fly. You still have to be able to, for example, follow headings or follow certain speeds or altitudes. And then also, if you're flying instrumentally as well, you have to be able to fly, or you have to be able to have navigational capabilities, which is why you would, for example, choose to fly the FlyByWire A320. You can fly with instruments or visually, and then even fighter jets as well. You can technically, now I'm going to be very careful here, you can technically fly with fighter jets, as long as you fly IFR or VFR, as long as you do a normal flight in a fighter jet. You can also use any call sign that you would like and fly from A to B, IFR or VFR. So about military then. What if you want to do something military? Now, obviously, we have DCS, that is quite a decent military simulator. But actually, VATSIM has what's known as VSOAs, Virtual Special Organization organizations. Don't quite remember the abbreviation. But the VSOAs are basically virtual military organizations that you can join, and you can be a part of that community where they fly, where they do military procedures. For example, you can join VRAF, Virtual Royal Air Force. You can join actually one that I'm a part of. It's called BVA Military. It's US based. In the Boston area. So, yeah. But I'm looking at the flight, and it looks like we are landing.
Yeah, looking very good. The pilots are established on the instrument landing system. We have the runway in sight. It's a, well, maybe not a beautiful day. It is a nice day in Rotterdam. And we'll shortly, I assume, we'll see the pilots disconnect the autopilot, take over, and land the aircraft on the runway.
So, what goes through the mind of a pilot when you're landing? What are you thinking of? What are some of the risk factors?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So I think it's one of the important things about specifically flying the Airbus, from what I've heard, is that you should be making very small corrections to keep the airplane on its flight path, because most of the time the way that you've set up the aircraft for the approach with the autopilot, you're going to be pretty much following or basically aiming towards the runway already, and you don't have to make much correction at all. So I think we'll see Aaron has disconnected the autopilot at this point, and as you can see, the runway is not moving much at all in the pilot's window, and that's exactly how it should be. That's how you keep a stable approach and a safe landing.
Very good. So, Aaron, good luck. We're breaking 200 feet, I think, now. So, let's watch the landing.
Very good. There's touchdown. Very impressive landing. I think a round of applause is appropriate.
So,
awesome.
From the ATC perspective, the pilot will shortly be, or our flight will shortly be receiving instructions to vacate the runway and taxi to a gate. So this we've now completed the most crucial, well, one of the most crucial parts of the flight. I guess this is a good time to ask, does the audience have any more questions? Now I'm gonna cover the lights for a second. Any questions from the stage? Oh, yes.
Flyby 32 of Victor 2.
Flyby 32, welcome to Rotterdam.
Sorry, if you can give us 1 second.
Bravo 2 via Yankee.
Bravo 2 via Yankee, Flyby 32.
No, taxiing scare. I apologize, yes. So the question is, there is an arrival and approach frequency. What is the difference? In practice, it's the exact same thing, but certain countries have different names. In the Netherlands, for example, you say Schiphol arrival. No, sorry, you say Schiphol approach, but in some places you can say, I don't know, for example, Dubai arrivals, you say. It's the same position, it's still the same approach position that guides aircraft down towards the runway to land there. So arrival and approach is the same, well, can be considered the same frequency, if that answers your questions. Great. I'm not a controller from the Dutch VCC, so I'm not an expert, I wouldn't say. But do we have any Dutch VCC experts in the audience? Okay, so in that case, I would recommend that you go visit this Dutch VCC stand afterwards, and you can ask them. They know all about the procedures in Schiphol and how that works. So, I'm not sure how much time we have left from asking the backstage. Do we have a lot of time left, or? 2 minutes. Okay, we have 2 minutes.
Perfect. I think the timing was quite good. The pilots are start parking up. They're getting ready to shut down the engine, shut down the engines, shut down the plane, shut down the plane's electrical system, deboard and get ready to go home to their wife and kids or their spouses. And I think this is pretty much the end of the presentation for us as well. So we're open for any questions, or maybe if you have something to add, David, now would be the time to ask, certainly.
The one thing I have to add from the VATSIM perspective is if you're not a member of VATSIM yet, and if this sounded interesting to you, if what you saw stage and what I talked about sounded interesting to you, then you can go to vatsim.net and go on the website and you can register today. We have one requirement, well, we have a few other requirements, but the main requirement is you need to be 13 years old. Unless anyone has any more questions, yes, we have a question from the internet.
From the internet. I am not the internet. I'm just reading on behalf of the internet. So this is more geared towards the Fly-by-Wire team. They're asking, will FMS V2 implement the go-around procedures?
That is an excellent question. Yes, indeed it will. So FMS V2, for those that don't know, is our new version of the flight management system. It's something I hinted at the start, and FMS V2 will indeed add those go-around tracks. I think it's something that you might have seen on, if you watch real videos on YouTube. I certainly do. It's a blue line that you see on the navigation display to fly the missed approach procedures, and it's one of those automation features that really helps pilots, especially single pilots, follow these procedures, and it relieves a lot of workload. As a matter of fact, you can fly the entire missed approach with the autopilot in the Airbus, and yes, indeed, FMS V2 will contain missed approach procedures. Thank you. Good question.
Thank you. And the final question we have from the internet, any ETA on the other engine variants for the A320NX?
Yeah, so the A320neo comes with two different engine options. One is the CFM LEAPS, and the other option is the Pratt & Whitney. They're two different manufacturers. They're two different providers of the new engine option in the A320neo. And the way we usually go about it is that we're at the moment focusing on getting the CFM LEAPS correctly working and all of the things behind the scenes, the simulation working properly before trying to implement new engine options like the Pratt & Whitneys. But it's something that is certainly on the roadmap for down the line and something that we're considering to implement. But at the moment we're focusing on the CFM LEAPS. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have wrapped up. We are now nearly in a cold and dark situation again. The pilots are packing their bags and going home. So thank you very much to Aaron, pilot flying today, and Dimitri, pilot monitoring. And that'll be us leaving the stage. So thank you for us. And we've got 1 hour left before FS Weekend closes. So have fun, guys.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you very much to the VATSIM and the Fly-by-Wire team who did an amazing job just demonstrating all of that for us, even with all of that stuff going on as well. Before you do leave, though, we do have a couple of special guests I would like to bring onto the stage in just one moment. So this entire weekend would not have been possible if it hadn't been for the hard work of some of the staff, all of the staff here in the museum, and of course the event organizers themselves. Now, I'm not the event organizer, I've just merely been a humble host looking after the FSElite Theatre this weekend, and it gives me great honor to welcome both Nils and Yanis from the FS Weekend team, who are just going to do a very quick hello to the community and also give you some more important updates. So please, welcome to the stage, Yanis and Nils.
Yes, hello. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I think a final word of thanks for everybody who's participated in this event. And yeah, I've had a blast. It's been amazing.
It's been really cool.
We've been working on this for, I think, the last 6 months, maybe more, 8 months.
Year?
And, a year? No, not a year, but quite a long time. And to see everything come together this weekend and see everybody so excited, that's really, really cool. And yeah, of course, I want to thank our amazing partners in this event, the Aviodrome Museum. Yeah, these people have put in an amazing amount of work to get everybody in and out and through the doors, and get their cars parked, and get everyone's stuff inside the museum, and hopefully out safely again this afternoon.
Hope so too.
And of course, the great help from the guys from FSElite who have run this theater like true professionals over the last weekend, and to see everybody come on stage and tell their story has been very cool. And yeah, last but not least, you, the audience, to be here either physically in Lelystad or remotely, watching the stream and following along with all the news updates. It's been very cool. And of course, Jonas has been a true partner in crime to get this all off the ground. So
couldn't have done it without you.
Yeah, for sure. So
and we have one final announcement to make. Next year, same weekend, 15 and 16 March, Saturday and Sunday, we'll be back right here for FS Weekend 2025.
Yes.
So make sure you're there.
Thank you. Thank you.
you.
Thank you.